everyone. It's 9 o'clock, and it is time for the continuation of the Lane County Board of Commissioners meeting, but our continuation is a joint meeting this morning with the Lane County Fair Board. So after having called the Board of Commissioners to order and noting that all 5 commissioners are here, I'd like to turn it over to our Fair Board to open their meeting.
I'd like to open up the December Fair Board meeting.
Okay, and why don't we go around the table just for make sure everybody has their names and what their relationship is to the table, if not to other people. Pete Sorensen, Lane County Commissioner.
Joe Burney, County Commissioner, no relationship to this table at all.
Jay Bozovich, County Commissioner.
Rich Cunningham, Fair Board.
Rachel Bivens, Marketing Manager and Assistant Fair Manager.
Corey Buller, Land Event Center Manager and Fair Manager.
I'm Jack Harris, Fair Board, and it's my last meeting.
Wow, thank you for your service.
Sid Burridge, Fair Board.
Randy Twing, Fair Board.
Brett.
Brett Dean, Fair Board.
Steve Mokrainski, County Administrator.
Pat Farr, Board of County Commissioners, and your liaison to the Fair Board. I'm a voting member only in the event of a tie or a lack of quorum.
Heather Putt, County Commissioner.
Okay, welcome. We had set this up as a work session and wanted to make sure that we had a full, ample opportunity for the fair to make a presentation. And we set this up for a 45-minute presentation. I guess it's not going to take that long, but that's okay. We'd set it up for 15 minutes for the commissioners to ask questions beyond the presentation. So if we could use some of that time, that'd be great.
Yep, well, thank you, I appreciate the opportunity. I was gonna actually count up how many this has been, but I decided not to do that. It's probably in my best interest. I do want to make a couple of just quick announcements. One, as already noted, this is the last meeting for 2 members who termed out with Brett Dean and Jack Harris, so appreciate your guys' time and effort. We have plaques for you. Unfortunately, due to the logistics of picking them up this morning, we did not bring them here, so we will have those for you at another time. Appreciate your guys' work and effort, and I wouldn't be surprised that it probably doesn't continue in some fashion. Both have expressed interest in to continue helping either with committees or other work as well. So thank you very much for that. And then I also want to make sure that we give a shout out to literally almost every person within the county that helps us put this fair on. So it's not just our staff, which I do fully believe are pretty fabulous, but everywhere from finance to accounts payable to accounts receivable, everybody touches the fair in one shape or another at some point throughout the year. And so a big thanks to everybody within the county that works on that with us. And then I also have to mention our fabulous partners. We have a tremendous amount of partners, whether that's food and beverage partners, whether that's Carnival, whatever it is. We have some pretty good working relationships, and I think we put on, at least in our mind, one of the best county fairs in the state of Oregon, if not the best. So appreciate all that. So what we've been doing with this annual report each year is it's kind of a snapshot at the end of the fair of how it went. It's obviously used financially. It's used for planning purposes. Our mission, our goal has stayed the same now for several years. We've been trying to entertain and educate fair visitors. We celebrate our community's traditions, talents, diversity, agricultural, and urban heritages. We support that by producing a fun, family-friendly, safe event that's geared toward all residents from all demographics of Lane County and beyond. I mean, we love pulling from other counties as well. So that being said, the 2019 fair was a great fair. It was a record breaker in several areas. We'll go over some of those in detail. Financially exceeded our budget, and our budget was a little bit tighter this year. We put some more expenses in to make some changes to some areas of the fair, and yet we still exceeded our budgeted revenue and our budgeted net. We're very proud of that. And again, it'd be very easy to take credit, but really it's the staff and the partners that put it on that get all the credit for that. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Rachel, and she's going to kind of go through some high points of the report, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions and diving into that stuff.
All right. So does everybody have a copy or sharing a copy, since it sounds like the electronic one didn't make it there?
And as soon as Dan shows up, he's got his laptop, it's on the N drive, PWN drive, we can email it to you, but I have an extra copy if anybody wants it. No, good.
So we'll just start, so does that mean that you guys haven't had a chance to review it at all up to this point? Okay, well, then I'll give it a little bit more detail than I was going to. We'll start with fare, admission, and attendance. The first thing I want to point out is that we were up significantly this year in both paid and overall. But the most exciting thing that happened in terms of our admission and attendance this year is that we switched to electronic gate ticketing. This is a conversation we've been having for many years. Infrastructure is a challenge. Our gates are very far away from each other. In order to trench that power and Wi-Fi, it's exceptionally expensive. So over the years, we've been looking for a company who can bring their own network and guarantee it's not going to crash, which is a big deal. And so we found one this year. Gate ticketing, I think, considering first year, we had a few little hiccups, nothing that was insurmountable, a few little things that we'd like to come back and make sure we're capturing that data properly and more accurately, but overall, really, really happy with the way that it worked. I think that shift also then increased our online sales. So one of the missions we've been working on over the past few years is to increase our pre-sales, our rainy day fund, if you will. And if you look down at that bottom graph, our online admissions, this is single days, multi-days, has increased significantly, almost double over last year. The other one that also doubled was our group sales. Group sales is groups of 25 or more get a significant discount when they buy a certain amount. So one of our largest purchasers is Peace Health. I think they came in with about 1,800 tickets this year, so that was pretty awesome. The one thing I'd like to point out that we do talk about sometimes is that the fare attendance, paid attendance versus the total attendance, you'll notice there is a significant difference there. And what that is paid ticket is one solid ticket. So that does not account for the multi-day tickets. It's just the one single ticket purchase. And then the total attendance accounts out for all of the multi-days, the returners, all of our exhibitors who get wristbands and come in every day, our vendors, our participants, any of the media trades that have worked out, sponsor partners, things like that. So that's where you get that large variance in number. Any questions on that? Yeah.
I was just writing down my question. To be a group, how many people do you have to be a group?
Minimum 25.
25?
Yeah.
And then what level of discount do you get if, say, your Danish Brotherhood group wanted to,
You don't know about Bethel?
if they wanted to start a group? In other words, a small group, 25 people, a group that involves 25 people, what kind of discount do they get?
Sure. It's $2 off each of the tickets for the smaller groups, and once you hit, we changed it last year, it's 105?
Oh, a little over 100.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
then it becomes a Best Buy, which is $5 a ticket,
Uh-huh,
no matter
okay.
how many you have over that.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that would be a great way to encourage organizations, baseball teams, whatever, church groups.
Didn't the county do that?
Yeah,
county.
we've got quite a few that do that and then give it to their employees as, things to take their family to.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that's what we did with Lane County Day on
Yeah.
Saturday.
yeah, we did it with Lane County Day this year, actually.
Mm-hmm.
We just started that, and that's what we did. It was $5 a ticket as well. So.
Thank you.
The other thing, I guess, other piece of admission is parking. So a few years ago, we started to work with the sheriff's, Lake County Mounted Sheriff's Posse and Search and Rescue as a sort of dual team. They had worked for us just on a paid basis. We paid them a flat fee and they managed the parking and kept it free. They came to us with a proposal a few years ago and asked if we would be willing to charge for parking and then split the revenue. So that is what we do. It is a 50-50 split. So our half was about a little over $25,000. It's pretty straightforward in terms of the number of cars that we do, so that number shifts just a couple thousand based on ins and outs throughout the day each year. But that's holding steady. I think it's actually up over last year.
That's slightly
a
up
little
over
bit,
last
so.
year. Yeah.
Is that on page 3 or are we? Page 4.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No graph, just a statement.
Not. Do you want me to go through some of this stuff?
No, we'll circle back, it's fine, just go through this plan.
Okay, so page 5, our vendors, food and alcohol vendors. One of our largest sources of revenues for the fair is our food vendors. So the chart on the top is a breakout of food versus alcohol. The reason we do that is we have a special partner who does the alcohol sales. Food involves food and non-alcoholic beverages, so all of the Pepsi products that are sold at the fair, lemonades, things like that. So you can see this was one of our record breakers this year. We went from 591,727 in total food only gross to 644,177. So a very large jump between years. Our alcohol sales also increased, but since it's a finite product line, it only increased by about $14,000. So again, it's an increase in percentage to us. So the second column in food sales net to LCF, that is based on the 24% of the gross charge that we charge our vendors. And so you can see we went from 142 to 154 this year. And then in terms of our alcohol, the percentage is a little bit more complicated. It's on a sliding scale that grows as the revenue grows. But this year we went from 53 last year to 59 this year. And then just for our fun, we do this. We like to look at the daily food and alcohol sales. We do it for a number of reasons. One of them is to look at the concert artists. What genre was it? Did it impact the sales? Oftentimes it does. Also, if we had a weak artist, how did that happen? Not how did that happen, excuse me. How did that impact it? Not happen.
That's what we want to know.
Sometimes we run out of money. Sometimes artists do better than others unexpectedly. So this is kind of a fun way for us to look at it each day and really hone in what we're buying for the next year. So unfortunately, I didn't bring with me who we had this year and what day it was. But Saturday, you can see, was just an off-the-charts day for us. We had an unbelievable day. Paul McCartney? Yes, that's right. Martina was Friday.
Friday,
Yeah, so Friday, this is a great, I'm glad you brought that up because it's a great example of how artists can influence the success of our day. Friday was pretty hot for Eugene. Most people wilt at a certain point, and we had reached that certain point during the day. 5 o'clock came around, Martina was the concert that night, and it was like the floodgates opened. So the influence that those main stage artists have on our ability to make a solid day is pretty significant. So we take a serious look at this every year when we're buying. The prices continue to go up year over year, making it very difficult for us to buy the caliber artists we would like to, but in the end, the ancillaries go up high enough that it usually works itself out. So that's something that we work on every year.
It's one of the main drivers when you talk to the food vendors, and one of the reasons why they're successful is that we've been able to have some pretty solid acts in recent years, and they're able to capitalize on that by getting the lunch crowd or the afternoon crowd or those that are in the carnival area, but then they attribute to the 2 to 3 hours in the evening where the concert is they can make 70 to 80% of their daily allotment within a couple of hours when they're ready for it. So having that is critical to keeping those numbers up and making those vendors happy.
Any questions I can answer on that before we move on to the next page?
About food, how many commissioners showed up for serving ice cream?
Hey, I tried. I literally tried.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I
lost.
tried to keep the food sales up on Thursday.
Well, we appreciate those efforts.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna make
I
sure.
always have to go out to the Midway after serving ice cream. And have fair food.
I literally got lost. I read through.
All right, one of the areas that we recognize needs improvement in is our commercial vendors. Commercial vendors are a challenge. So these are the vendors that are inside the performance hall or outside. There's a number of things that create the challenge. The least of which is the strength of the other shows in our market, particularly at our facility. So this is a conversation we've had with our partners and our clients over the years. Somebody like the home show, a lot of those vendors and sometimes sponsors, which is tough to swallow, go to the home show instead. 3 times a year, they're very, very successful. Oftentimes after 1 or 2 shows with Helen, they don't need to book again. because they're so busy for the next couple of years. So that has created a bit of a challenge for us to keep our vendor halls full. It is something that we're gonna continue to work on, but as you can see, there was a significant decline between 18 and 19. The other thing that happened is that sometimes we're on top of quite a lot of events, and people either can't build the route for themselves, which is what they'll tend to do. They'll try to book like Lynn County, and then Douglas County or Jackson County, however they want to build the route up and down the corridor. Some years it works better for us and some years it doesn't. So that will be our focus moving forward, is a little bit more outreach. We're gonna have to expand the pool beyond Lane County. We do have a number of vendors who are already from out of state, but it's a matter of going even farther, pushing that sales tactic. So that is one of our goals for 2020, is to get those numbers back up and make sure those halls are filled.
Yeah, you guys heard a little bit about this yesterday from Karen Remus regarding the home show and some of her vendors. Those used to be fair vendors before her home shows. And once they got strength that they have those home shows, they're booked in the summertime doing their work. They're not interested in coming down for 5 days and sitting under a tent, sitting in the building. They're pretty booked up from the home show. So we know that, and that's okay. And she gives us a few vendors every once in a while. So
And in conjunction to that, the bulk of her business is not the Lane County Fair, even though it does occur at.
yeah, it's at different times, but it's the same local vendors that we're trying to pull from to get into our show. So.
And
So
in
we're
terms of-
not necessarily thinking of her as an advocate for the fair. She's an advocate for her.
She's also an advocate for the fair. Like I said, she has given us some leads on some vendors that are looking for more exposure. She has shared some.
Yeah, she's been.
Not all of them, but some.
You gotta realize,
Bottom feeder.
it's expensive to be a vendor
Yeah.
and come to those fairs. It costs a lot of money. I know from my experience years ago, you can only do so many a year. So you're gonna pick the best of the shows that you wanna
Yep.
go to, and the home show, we still have the same vendor, they're just a different location.
Yep.
The home show, she does 3 a year, so hers are in January, March, and October. So our fair fits into that gap in terms of where we could pull some of the vendors, but again, a lot of those vendors are already booked up because of her, which is great, and we're very happy for her. It just means that we have to expand our pool a little bit farther.
And Sid, back in the 70s, you and I were side by side at the home show in the old, in the animal buildings.
Yeah, I remember one time the parrot come up missing, and we had barbecue going on.
I have a question about the commercial vendor category. As Sid mentioned, it's pretty expensive to have your employees there for 4 days or maybe even 5 days when you add it all together. And the number that's dropping, that dropped this past year, well, I guess over 3 years really, 101, 99, 82. I'm wondering if there's some way to offer some sort of loss leader to emerging businesses that are looking for more customers. So they're not in the category of businesses that don't want to come because they've already got so much work from their prior fairs or other events at the Lane Event Center, but would be willing to come in and try it out. I'm thinking of some of the businesses that haven't done this before, but they would love to have the kind of traffic that you get, be willing to try it out. Have you given any thought to that?
We have, this year actually, we introduced half booths, so we've had many a conversation about that. As you know, I don't have the resources to staff a full 10 by
Yep.
10. I can't afford the price. Now, we have held the price steady for about 5 years, so we
Yeah.
are very conscientious about that. And we did fill all of those spaces, so we'll look again at adding.
You filled all the half space.
All
Yeah,
half spaces,
yeah.
yes. So I think we added 10, if I recall correctly.
8 to 10 somewhere
8 to
in
10,
there. Yeah.
and so just as an experiment to see if that did work, because we have had those inquiries and it was successful, so we'll look to do more of those next year.
Years ago, we did try offering a different rate to local nonprofit people that were trying to just get their foot in the door. And there were some logistical issues with that. There were some complaints from other vendors that were longtime vendors and paying for their space, and somebody else was getting space right next to them for a reduced cost and various things like that. So
Yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
Just out of curiosity, Pete asked a specific question. I want to ask a general one. Have you gone through all of your strategies at this juncture for getting the commercial vendor booths rented out to the degree you want to?
No, I think we've tried one, we try not to do too many changes in 1 year, because then you can't judge which one worked and which one didn't. So we've gone through several different ones. You see back there in 17, we had a higher year. That was one of the years we tried something. It worked on the number of vendors. It didn't work on the quality of vendors.
Right.
We actually had to boot a few out.
Yep.
We'll try a few different things. I think we still got ways to tweak it and find
Gotcha.
find
For
it.
sure.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of sister fairs, we
Yeah.
all call each other all the time and use each other's resources. And I don't know how, much of that was done last year. I mean, that was certainly the instruction and the intent, but we had some new staff last year, and so I'm not sure how comfortable she was in doing that. So we'll be working through that this year to make sure that it absolutely does happen. But oftentimes we share our lists all around, and that helps.
This may be of no added value, and if so, I apologize for taking the time. But I did notice a few weeks ago at our Association of Oregon Counties, where commissioners from all across the state come, there were a large number of vendors that are trying to break into this market. And I don't know if it would be useful for you to get that list from someone, because they may have an interest also and simply not know how to connect.
Thank you, we'll take a look. All right, anything else on that one, or shall we jump on to page 7? Okay, so page 7 refers to the main stage concerts, which we have spoken about a little bit already. If you'll note, when you're looking at the ticket sales scale, we were down a little bit this year, but in the budget we were actually up. That does happen. It's based on the caliber of entertainment, because the ticket prices are driven by that. So each year it's questionable, just depends on what we can route, what's available, what their price point is, and what we feel like we can sell it for. So this is something that we look at every year. Again, we reevaluate whether or not the strategy worked, was it the right price point for this market, where were we missing. So we have taken a look for 2020 already. We're considering, we actually shifted the seating to accommodate for more premium, because that's what sells every time. Surprisingly enough, the more expensive tickets, so that's what we're gonna add a few in, and then we'll lower the price of the standard tickets to a point that we feel is even more reasonable, and see where that gets us. So the goal here is twofold: is one, obviously, to make sure we hit our budget numbers and then increase revenue, but is also to sell all the seats rather than having a 60 or 70% capacity show. So we should, in theory, be selling 5,000 tickets all total for the week. But you can see that that's been a struggle for us. We are gaining on it, and we want to keep gaining on it. And so we continue to kind of manipulate that way that we're looking at the numbers and the seats in an effort to get there.
We gotta get Eric Church back.
Yeah, you go back and look at that graph that year.
10
That was an
grand.
interesting graph.
Except that he went from 50,000 to 500,000.
Yeah,
That's the only
literally
issue
in
we
the
have
span
there.
of a month, his buy cost went from 50,000 to 500,000.
We booked him, and in between booking and the fair, he got awarded, what was it, Entertainer of the
Yeah,
Year,
yeah.
or
And-
New Entertainer of the Year or something,
Yeah.
country music, and so it was like this.
It was
It's a
nuts.
perfect storm.
It was-
We always try to find one of those and take a shot on them, hoping to hit again, and it's pretty rare that you actually hit it, but we keep trying.
Yeah, that was just incredible.
We should call the people that designate these entertainers as stars, ask them 6 months ahead who's gonna be the star.
Who's
Yeah.
going to be the winner?
Yeah, I mean, interesting enough, some of them, you get a sense of that actually happening. Yeah, you'll get a sense that, they keep saying this is an up-and-comer and they're about to hit. You're like, really?
We're ready.
We're ready.
Yeah, last year we had a couple of those. Sunday was Janet Kramer, and that was the conversation.
Yeah.
She's got one in the top 10 right now. There's a couple more coming out. She's got a blog. She has all this following, and we're like, awesome. We're gonna crush Sunday, and I think we
Just
sold
didn't have-
140 tickets.
Yeah, just didn't have.
It was a
But-
birthday.
But as you can see on page 8 there, the concert ticket revenue, as she mentioned, did go up, and that was because of the rest of the artists. And
Yeah.
it was a
When you
great
have
lineup.
Martina and
Yeah, Martina McBride hit a big one for us, so that's great.
In prior years, when we've had this conversation, we've also talked about the temperature in Eugene at the time of the fair. I don't recall these temperatures. Was it high or low? Was it in the hundreds? Was it in the 90s? I don't know.
Rachel,
There was
Well,
one,
yeah.
one
Just
day
one day.
that got a little bit warm, but overall, we have been extremely lucky
Yes.
in our weather, for the last probably 5 to 7 years. We've had maybe one day per year where it's either a little cool, overcast, a little sprinkle, or a little warm, but it has not been multiple days.
So we didn't have any rain out, we didn't have any
Not when we were in
105. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
August
had
was-
multiple problems when we were in August, and
Yeah.
it seems, that would seem odd in one respect, but it just was really consistent in August. It was either too hot or it rained
Yeah,
every year.
yeah. So this was fairly consistent for
Fairly
the
consistent.
prior, in other words, when we look at these bar graphs
Yep.
a year,
Fairly
the
consistent.
temperatures are, and the, whether it's
It's
precipitation.
been fairly consistent.
Yeah, yeah.
Typically, it's been 1 to 2 warm days per year, and they hit on different days.
But
Some
that
days
can be a big problem if you have a big name, or not a big name
Yeah.
artist with a bad weather day.
Yes,
and
it-
we have done that for sure.
Yeah,
We have done that. We have been lucky with the recent, issues with forest fires in the summertime. Some of our other county fairs that we visit with have had some significant problems with heat and smoke and stuff like that, and it's made some major impacts on their shows, which you just can't control.
Right.
We have been lucky we haven't had that.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I just make a quick comment that we have now posted the material you're reviewing online, so if anyone here or anyone watching wants to access the
Did you find
report,
it?
it's available online.
Thank you.
Okay, so this page 8, underneath the ticket revenue, you can see how we calculate our approximate attendance. The reason the standing room is so approximate is because there's basically a fire lane that lives behind the main stage, and then we have beer tents and shade seating tents. So short of going around and counting the number of people at tables, we sort of just guesstimate. It was a lot easier when they were all kind of standing, but we've provided these areas and they were a huge hit, so we don't intend to change them, even if it makes it a little harder for us to kind of guesstimate how many are standing after that. One of the benefits of that electronic ticketing is that I can actually take a look at who's coming in by hour and watch the traffic pattern. So, like I said, we had a few hiccups this year, but as we get better and better at it, we'll actually be able to track that, and so it'll give us a little bit better sense of if people are rushing in at 6:37, which is right before concert open time, then that's probably a larger crowd coming in for the standing room only. So that's one of the benefits of that software, is that we're going to have a lot more information and traffic patterns and ability to gauge what's working and not working. Do you want to add to that, Bill?
Oh, understood.
Okay, page 9, grounds entertainment. So this goes back to what Corey was talking about as our overall goal of providing a fun, safe environment. Our goal when we schedule the grounds entertainment is to provide something for all ages so that the family will stay and play all day. So all of these shows are included with the fair ticket price. We take a look at how we're scheduling. We make sure to build them out so that people can go from one to the next, to the next, to the next. And then by the time they notice, they've been at the fair for 6 hours. So that's the goal for us. A couple of things, though, that we really have been focusing on in the last couple of years is providing opportunities for these families to have respite in the middle of the heat, or just, following a toddler around all day. Sometimes you need to just sit down. So we have a couple of things. The toddler zone is one that is excellent. It's inside the building, so it's climate controlled. It also provides a changing station and breastfeeding station, or stations, for multiple mothers while their younger kids are under supervision and can play if they have more than one kid. So it has been very well received and very well appreciated, and we will continue to do that as we move forward. And the other one that's a little less functional and more fun is our Circuit Imagination and Clown College, but it is a similar concept. It's several tents. It's areas in the shade for the parents to sit and rest while their kids are actually involved in an interactive show. These guys do a great job, from bubbles to hula hoops to costumes to actually being in circus play. So that's another one that we really are proud of having.
It was riveting.
Was it? So
It is. I mean, I had a 3-year-old with me.
the senior social, as we touched on a little bit earlier in the auditorium, I think this is the 3rd year it's been in that building. Went very well. We had some of our entertainers were a little less than they advertised themselves, but we were able to sort of fake it till we make it and grabbed one from outside and brought it in to sort of push the other one off the stage. So hopefully nobody noticed that, but that was a fun little adventure for us.
Well, the shepherd's crook gave it away.
I mean, I would have. We were getting really close at that point.
But and it's still a very active event for right away in the morning for seniors that day. They are very quick to come in the gate and make sure they find their way to the ice cream social.
We usually have a lineup at
We
about
usually have a line at
9:30
about 9:30.
for our 11 o'clock open. So we usually open a little early to get them out of the
Yeah.
sun, but
And again, I know several people have come over the years and helped with that, and Jay's there almost every year, so we do appreciate that help.
and it sounds like you had trouble finding it, so we'll make sure you.
Yeah.
Lack of competence, but I will adjust for that next year.
But Jay, was the ice cream any softer last year? this year?
They're actually not, they haven't let me scoop the last couple years.
Oh.
I'm actually appreciative of that, because the first year I was there and I actually was scooping, the ice cream was hard as a rock. And
I was with you that year. You couldn't even get into
yeah,
it.
my wrist
Yeah.
was sore for a week.
It's sort of like how you move the entertainment around,
Yeah,
right? You
yeah.
just-
It works out really well. Our vendor that partners with us on that and volunteers for that has been doing the actual scooping.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the Dairy Mart. Look, we did it this
It's
year.
not.
No, it's not.
It's
Oh.
Umpqua.
Umpqua.
It is,
Lar-
Umpqua is
Dairy
serviced
Mart.
through Larson's.
Larson's.
Who's one of our food
Dairy Mart
vendors.
did in the past?
They have, it's been about 3 years.
3-4 years.
Yeah, and they brought the kids in
Yes.
to do, and they're actually handing out the ice cream and stuff like that, so it's
Right,
kind of,
so-
it's getting a commissioner in there and pushing kids away is kind of, yeah, it's like, I'll let the kids have their fun, yeah.
Yeah, there's multiple groups, and we've got Willamette Lane's Camp
Yeah.
250, and they're
And
clearing
Martin Luther King
tables, and
culinary
and
program.
Martin
helping
Luther
to
King
serve and all
culinary
that, yeah.
programs, and they're serving, so
Yeah.
we've got multiple entities in there working on it.
Yeah. It's still fun, though. The MLK kids were fun at the door,
Yeah.
helping me hand out maps and stuff.
Okay, on to another one of our largest sources of revenue is the carnival. We have been partners with Fantastic Shows for many, many years. In 2017, it was time for the contract to cycle. And so they came in and added, increased their percentage on the up to 500,000 and then also on the above that. So you'll note between 16 and 17 a significant jump, and that's what that is from. But I do want to point out a couple of things on this, is that this year, this is the third year we've done the pay one price bracelets available for any one day of the fair, which all of the fairs in the state have gone to that. Probably, I'm going to guess most of them around the country. What we found is that when you do it on a single day, it kills your attendance the rest of the week. This is much better. It evens it out. People are happier because more people can actually get on the rides. And the discount that they offer when you do a pre-sale is enormous. It goes from, it was $37.50 if you bought ahead of time versus $50 on site. In the last 4 days prior to the end of that sale, we went from $60,000 to $358,000 in pre-sales. So this is an enormous source of revenue for us. It's an enormous pre-sale for us. And everyone seems to really like it. Customer complaints are fairly minimal. And it's usually logistic issues. I can't get my printer to print. Can you fix this for me? Things like that. So that's easy. We can do that. And then if you look at the overall total carnival gross, it went from $689,650 to $817,776. That was an increase not only in the pre-sale but also on site due to the increase in attendance. We were finding that people were staying longer. The turnover of vehicles were slower, so that's an indicator for us of what's happening on the grounds. And you can see there that the net to us at the fair was $447,577, so a record year in the carnival.
I would be surprised if any other county fair in the state can beat those.
Yeah,
Beat those numbers. The state fair, obviously, because of the longer run and the size of what they can put on, probably those numbers are larger, but I don't think any county fair probably would.
We do
compete
have
with
the
that.
most rides of any other county fair in the state.
Is this a good time to talk about parking and parking revenue, or is that gonna come later?
We briefly touched on it earlier,
Yeah.
but now's
Sure.
A
perfect.
little bit more in detail regarding the
Sure.
posse and the future of the posse, what's happening there?
So as far as I know, I haven't heard anything different. Our plan is to move forward. I mean, we'll be discussing it here in February as we go through our budget for the fair, but the plan is to work with them again. Other than some internal auditing checks and balances that we've instituted the last 2 years, a lot of the other issues have subsided or been worked out.
So the relationship remains really
Yes.
close? and
Oh,
good.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is such a fun part of the fair for kids in particular, to see
Yeah.
the posse.
Yeah, and it's not just the posse, there's search and rescue, there's a lot of entities that are now being involved. In fact, I think this year, the posse actually had Eugene Pony Club come and help with a portion of the parking as well. So I know that even through them, it reaches out even further than just through them.
There's one pretty scruffy looking guy with a beard that. I
Yeah,
appreciate.
yeah, we have to work with that one.
Myron.
He did show up again, and we were very appreciative to see him out there, even though he didn't have to be.
Yeah.
What, do you have any idea, oh, go ahead, Heather.
I have
I was just, on the graph for the carnival revenues, since there was such a big increase in the gross, but the net, I mean, we had a great increase, but it doesn't seem as proportional. Was something happening there?
Go ahead.
So the way that the contract works is that we get a larger percentage up to the first $500,000 in revenue, and then the percentage decreases after that. So that's where
Got
you
it.
see the shift there is, it does seem disproportional, but that's why.
Okay.
Go ahead, Joe.
Same chart, different question. It looks to me as if carnival gross revenues are climbing at a pretty steady pace from 2015 to 2019, but there's a big jump from 18 to 19, and I'm wondering, I'm sure you can tell me why that is.
So a lot of it comes down to us using the data that we have and trying to figure out where we're hitting. So we had a brick and mortar partner to do the pre-sales prior to this. We did do them online, but we were really pushing the brick and mortar sales. Once that the relationship just shifted, it didn't end, they just moved their sponsorship to something else. We realized that we were gonna have to hit it in a way that we'd never hit it before. So that is, I'm gonna say 90% attributed to social media marketing.
Really?
It is just a constant bombardment of, don't miss the discount, please don't miss the discount. Oh, by the way, there's a discount, don't miss the discount. And so it's that. We also have a new agency that marketing agency that we've been working with for the last 2 years, so they've changed their strategy as well. And I think it's a matter of more effectively being able to reach the people who we know are gonna buy these tickets. When you look at our overall demographic, it's very wide-reaching, right? So we have everyone from toddlers to grandmas and grandpas and everything in between. So that makes your marketing a little bit tougher because you have to figure out where to do it. And what we've learned over the past few years is what we need to segment out in order to make sure that we still get everybody to the fair, but can also increase the revenues where we need to increase them.
Well, it seems like you certainly were effective.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question back on the parking. Years ago, there was a LTD bus buyout where, I don't know quite how it worked, but it's like ride the bus to the fair. I don't think that worked out very well. LTD's ridership does show a pretty substantial increase. I'm just curious whether you've talked about testing that again to take some of the heat off of the parking and if that's gonna be workable or not.
We haven't the last couple of years, that doesn't mean we won't.
Yeah.
The last time we talked to LTD, they gave us basically a one-price buyout of the entire system, was the only way that they logistically could make it work. And that was, I believe, over $50,000 or so, and
It
so.
was very expensive.
It was very expensive, and we just didn't see, we couldn't find the numbers to show that it was worth that amount of purchase. Now, if,
They've
you know,
gone to a new e-ticketing system.
Right, so
which may change their
it's-
ability to do that.
it's possible moving forward that there may be some
Yeah.
opportunities to talk about that, where there's some different ways to do that,
Yeah.
rather than a buyout of the system.
Yeah, the other idea I thought of was, well, they've got these, EMX routes that are separate from the regular routes. And even that would be very valuable from, you know, big parking areas, like Valley River maybe, or even doing a shuttle separate from LTD. In other words, if parking becomes a limiting factor to growth, because I mean, you've still got quite a bit of growth potential on site, right? So how can you get more people there, without more cars there, is another way to look at it. Maybe a shuttle, even Autzen Stadium, someplace that,
We did shuttles many years
Yeah,
ago
we-
from Valley River, so I think
Yeah.
it's probably time to look into
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So, and
how many more people can you accommodate at the fair? In other words, these, what's a number that you've already got in your presentation here? Maybe the total attendance number?
Yeah, our total attendance, I believe, was 112.
112. What-
Historically, if you look back into the 70s and 80s, I think some of the numbers that were put out there were 150,000. I don't know how they were counted. I don't know how accurate they were. But yeah, I think you can add a few more thousand people per day.
Yeah,
certainly we have the space for that.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd have to look at the overall capacity varies based on what the actual layout is. And so it would be
do you have the parking to accommodate that?
No,
Yeah.
no, we're maxed. I mean, we fill the parking lot usually by 11:30, 12 o'clock. Every day, the parking lot is already full. But you do have people that leave throughout the day, and then
Yeah.
people filter in throughout the day. So.
Okay, well, thank you, just look into it.
Yep.
I think it's worth it.
Okay, page 11 is, talks about creative and livestock exhibits. So this is very much community focused and community involvement section. If you look on this graph, you can see that not only did our livestock entries go up, but our creative entries went up. I didn't list on here, but the number of exhibitors also went up in doing that, which makes logical sense there. So we could get into each one specifically, but some of the things that we take a look at every year is what worked, what didn't, where were we finding those exhibitors. We're always looking for more outreach. One of the things that we discuss a lot is how to get into the schools and involve those classrooms, particularly in the art areas. So we'll be working on that again this year. And then the other thing we look at is overall layout is, as we have 4-H and FFA, some of those programs are growing. How do we accommodate our open show animals as well as them without anyone having to cap their numbers? So that's something that we'll continue to look at. We did make a big shift this year, took all the 4-H large animals, particularly the market animals, and moved them into our livestock building, which had been primarily held for horses. So that area, it seemed to work very well. I think we had a few logistical issues in terms of some dust and, people getting in and out, but that happens anytime you move something so dramatically year to year. So that we'll be taking a look at that this year again to make sure we can get it all kind of ironed out. The horses seem to be okay with it and everything, so that's good.
I just had one observation. Of course, the little ones love to go into the livestock area and look at all the animals. And we would go, of course, after school. The hottest part of the day. It was so hot in there. And even though there were some fans, it was like, okay, we'll scoot through this as fast as possible because it was so hot. I don't know how to alleviate that in this particular setting. But that was a challenge just as a visitor.
Yeah, we do have some swamp coolers, some portable ones that we move around to different areas. Fans is about all we can do in those old barns, so it is a concerning change, and especially as it does. If we do get one of those really hot days, we've actually gone to putting water on the roof to try to cool the roof and bring in additional fans and stuff like that. We didn't last year because it was just kind of right on that borderline, but it was definitely warm.
But that's good to know that
Yeah.
it felt stifling, to a patron, because we sometimes just go in and out and we're on a mission and
Yeah.
don't notice as much, so.
Well, Brett, you could comment on what it's like for the people who spend all day in there.
Right.
I have my personal opinions on it. I think when we look long term, we have to be able to keep those conditions cool for the animals. When they get hot, you get the dust, you have chances for pneumonia, respiratory illnesses that pick up. So those kids are spending all that time in there. So I personally don't think it's the most feasible option, but I can understand how it was a good option as far as getting everyone together.
You know, as we move on, and we'll touch some of this later, but as we move on to, you know, the future planning and facility upgrades and stuff like that, those are the types of things that we do need to keep in the back of our mind. You know, when we're talking about the livestock building, about maybe putting a concrete floor in there, you turn around during fair and what a difference that would make in that facility to have a floor in there with some fans running and some air movement for that type of facility would make a huge difference. So those are some of the things we'll keep in mind as we move forward.
Years ago, we had the E. coli problem, and I'm wondering, in terms of animals, and particularly large numbers of urban residents that aren't around farm animals and don't realize they need to wash their hands. And I know that the last few times I've been to the fair, there's been plenty of those stations. Is that continuing?
Yeah, we have a fairly robust prevention system in place. Local doctor, Stephen Neal, actually is a leading expert on it. He travels around to different fairs and gives seminars on how to proof your fare against those types of things. And we've had him in twice over the last 15 years to take a look at our system. He's given recommendations. He actually developed his program partly on what happened to Lane County Fair years ago with that. So we've got a whole plan in place for that.
Yeah, good. And we haven't had any communicable diseases that we're aware of that attributed to the fair in recent years, have
Nope.
we? Yeah, good.
Okay, on to this, we can talk about the sponsorships. Sponsorships is an interesting area. You can see it's gone up and down over the last 5 years. This year I had a very unfortunate situation where one of my larger sponsors lost their funding within about 3 weeks of the fair. There's nothing I could do to get a sponsor of that value back that quickly. I mean, I certainly tried, but that was not, it didn't happen. So that's why you can see the significant decrease between 18 and 19. If you will note though that the in-kind dollars went up. In-kind is any kind of trade or partnership where we're not taking cash or a portion of their sponsorship is given in materials. So we did gain a brand new one who provided all the food for our VIP tents at no cost to us, which was a value of $10,000. So that was a huge win for us. That's an expense that we don't have to put out. So that's what goes into the in-kind trades. So total sponsorship value did end up being up over 2018. The goal for 2020 will be to increase those cash sponsorships overall, because that obviously goes against our expenses and is very helpful overall. We do have a couple of partnerships. The Bloodworks Northwest is part partnership, and part sponsorship. But this is a time of year where they struggle to get blood, so this is a partnership we've had with them for a number of years. We're very proud to be a part of it. And we're able to help them collect 2,997 units of blood, which then translates out to almost $9,000 potential lives saved. So this is a partnership we're actively engaged in and will continue to do as we move forward, because we feel like it's a huge value, not just to our community, but also the surrounding areas that benefit in receiving that blood at that time of year. And the other great partnership that we are so happy to participate in is the Food for Lane County partnership. On Sunday, we do our Food for Lane County admission special, which is, we ask for 3 cans. If somebody only brings one, we don't turn them away. But it is canned food in lieu of admission fees for the first 3 hours of the day on Sunday. This year we were getting close to 25,000 pounds, which is our goal, but we were up 2,500 pounds over 2018. So we feel like that was a nice solid improvement. And they continue to get better and better with us as well. They bring volunteers to staff the gates, and in terms of impact to us, it's pretty minimal. They really take care of it. The most challenging thing is figuring out a way to get their big giant totes in at 6 o'clock in the morning, because they're on pallets and they come in on big trucks and it's a mess. But other than that, that's really it.
It's a lot easier than the pancake and sausage.
Yes,
And us as well.
and us as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And I stopped at Weimar on my way and got tuna fish, by the way. And
That works.
we got into the fair, a whole family, for canned food this year. Right.
Some other great organizations that we partner with that we felt important to highlight this year are listed down here. It's anyone from Boy Scouts to Calvary Open Bible to some of the high school, the Lancer Legacy Club, Search and Rescue, the Pony Club, the Mounted Sheriff's Posse, another version of the Search and Rescue, which is called the Explore Scouts, which is, I think, their younger group. They were out there helping with parking this year. The 4-H and FFA, Larson's Fine Candies, they are the ones that provide the ice cream for the senior social, so they're listed there as a partner. The Education Center, Lane County Youth Services, Parks and Rec, and then some of our exhibitor clubs, the Emerald Valley Filters and the Eugene Garden Club. The Eugene Garden Club comes in and they fill all of our whiskey barrels, and then it becomes a contest amongst them, so that's kind of a fun thing. And we end up with really pretty varied flowers, so could be anything from succulents to climbers to anything, so they have a good time with it.
So you don't list Public Works specifically, but they had a pretty big presence there, apart from your
Yeah.
department.
Yes, yeah. The Public Works zone there in the courtyard between the auditorium and the museum has been very successful for the last 3 years now.
It was a lifesaver for
Yeah.
families like mine.
Yeah, they have a misting machine. Yeah, we need some more misting machines.
Okay, so this brings us to the finances. These revenues and expenses are estimates. Some of that is because Corey and I are going back and looking at a few items that seem like they ended up in the wrong category or the wrong organization code, meaning they should have been attributed to the event center and they ended up in the fair. That's something that we go through every year, just having the two separate funds in that way. And the other piece of the puzzle is that because of the way the fiscal year works, that the fair's at the beginning, is that staff expenses will continue to feed in backwards. So,
Our time today will be coded to fair, and so we've tried to estimate for the rest of the year, staff's, work on the fair, ourself as well. So there is a little bit of estimate in there, but we're usually pretty close.
yeah, revenue's pretty,
Yeah.
won't change much.
Yeah.
So this year we have an estimated revenue of $1,470,275 with an estimated expense of $1,347,529 for a net of estimated $122,745. So when Corey and I did our budget initially, we budgeted a net of $60,000, and this is where we ended up instead. So we feel.
So
very-
while that total net is not as high as it's been in the past, that was part of the plan when we did our budget through the fair board, was we didn't need, we weren't shooting for as big a net. We wanted to put some more stuff back out there, put some more capital expense back out there, put some more shade tents out there. So we increased our expenses, lowered our planned net to 60,000. So to come in above that is a really fabulous fiscal year for us again. So we'll be talking about putting some more back into equipment and entertainment and various other things again. So that's a good problem to have.
Misters.
Yeah, more misters, yeah, whatever.
Mostly right at our office, just.
Yeah.
It sounds like they need to be in the livestock barn.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have,
Dust down as well.
do you have any concerns about with the lowered net from 284 down to 122 per year for 3 years? Do you have any concerns that any, let's say, anticipated problem like the weather or the pick of the entertainer or whatever will put you ever below the net?
That's kind of why we
And
chose
where-
60,000 this year, is we
Yeah.
felt that was kind of the buffer that we needed in case we did
Uh-huh.
have a bad day, that we still wouldn't lose money.
Yeah, yeah.
That we would come in closer to a
Yeah.
net zero at 60,000. So we're kind of bouncing right on that number in that 60 to 70,000 range.
What
as a buffer.
what is the backup plan in the event you did go to a negative number?
We do have reserves.
Yeah. And how much reserve does the fair have right now?
I did not bring that, but there should be several $100,000 in reserve, so, I would feel pretty confident saying there's at least 1 to 2 years reserves if that were to happen.
Yeah.
Of course, we would rebudget the next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is one of the reasons that we are pushing for pre-sales so hard as a kind of a method right now, is because of our flexibility in days, because all of our tickets are available for whatever day you wanna come, we don't segment them. So you can buy a ticket in general and then come whatever day it works. Is that, let's say people have bought ahead of time, but Friday turns into a pouring rainstorm, well, those tickets are still valid for Saturday. with the exception of the concert, of course, but, that and the carnival tickets, that helps us to keep sort of, people will still come and will still spend that money, so that helps balance it out a little bit.
Yeah, so the internet or pre-sale really does, gives you more stability
It does.
against
Yes, it does, over time.
something more catastrophic.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Is there anything else you want to tell us? I liked your summary. The 2019 fair was another success.
Yeah.
It's a good summary.
Period.
There was more in the summary.
Yeah.
I get talked about a little bit is the pre-gate logistical meetings that you have, which I attended a couple, but I was just impressed with the way you handled that.
Yeah, so each day before we open up the fair, we have a pre-fair meeting where we bring together our partners from security, from the concert main stage area, from the carnival, our staff. Fair board usually attends, one or two of them. We've had various people attend, and we go over the logistics of what's planned for that day, if we've got anything out of the ordinary coming in the way of main stage, any concerns, or if we have any issues from the previous day. So we go over security issues, parking issues, whatever it may be. So it's been very helpful. Luckily, the last couple of years, those meetings have gone rather quickly. We haven't had any of those major issues to discuss, and it's been fairly quick and fairly painless. But we are there to iron them out before the public comes in if we have to.
No ATMs walking off.
Nope, didn't have any of that this year. They were big, solid structures surrounding those suckers this year.
That's another,
There was some serious metal holding those things down.
And it was impressive. I mean, the participation that took place between public safety was there also, and the day that I was there, both Sid, Randy, Rich, you guys were all there.
Yeah, and we've had representation from the fire marshal's office coming through each day to check things out. Our safety coordinator from Public Works comes through every day and checks it out. I mean, so we get a lot of participation across the board. It's great.
See, and I'm from Tillamook County, and I still say this is the best fair.
That's a very unique, I've been to that one. That's a very unique little venue. I enjoyed going there. Yeah.
Just bring pig and Ford races. That'll
Yes.
sound out.
Yeah.
And horse races.
Yep.
third place, youth photography, Coos County Fair.
There you go.
So if I may, from looking at numbers, I can speculate, but I'd like to ask you, what are two of the areas where you see the greatest potential to generate a stronger participation? Because I mean, I would assume one is cash sponsorships, but I'm just.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, cash sponsorships it's twofold. It's obviously helps with the expense line, but it is, again, additional advertising for us. That's the way that we look at our partnerships, is every partner that you get on board is another mouth out there speaking about the fair, encouraging their employees to come to the fair. I mean, that's one, but then there's, of course, then the community involvement, which is even more important. So we look at cash sponsorships as very valuable, but the in-kind partnerships are equally as valuable. So that's definitely an area to grow, and certainly after losing the last one, just really taking a look at how are we valuing our sponsorships, what are we including, what is it that's valuable to the people in this community, and who have we been missing? So, where can we retarget our attention to try to better that dollar value? The other one I think is, straight revenue is commercial vendors. It's a source of revenue, but it also provides a level of vibrancy to the fair that's really important. Outdoor space, while we don't have a lot of it, it's really important to us that it's full and vibrant. And so if you don't have a lot of commercial vendors, there can be stagnant spaces. Last year we were very lucky to be able to fill that with some, big equipment and cars that kids can climb on, look in, play around in. But it's always better when you have something that's actually more interactive. And get the revenue,
Right.
just to be honest about it.
Right.
So those, I think, are the two primary. The other thing that I think from my perspective is the gate ticketing. While it was fantastic last year, there's some areas for improvement that will then help us grow again with the pre-sales, with the ability to get people in faster, with the ability to capture the data, so that we can take that data then and turn it into additional either advertising or revenue generating tactics for the next year.
And I think it's also important to keep in mind that, this, basically, the general business plan of the fair has not been to generate as much revenue as possible or as much net as possible. It's been sustainability, viability, and keeping it, entertainment for everybody. So we have not tried to drive those numbers up. I'm sure if we wanted to, we could find ways to drive those numbers up, but that's not been the intent. It's been to not lose money, be viable, and sustainable for long term.
So if I may, just one, I don't want to beat a dead horse, and this is, in this room, I'm speaking really to the county administrator. There really isn't, I just observed, there's many trade associations, right? There's many opportunities for this, but I observed at the Association for Oregon Counties annual conference, which is located here, there was a large number of vendors, and I know AOC also asks those vendors to be sponsors, like to get cash contributions. And I think there is an intersection of some of those who are from Lane County and who may not be participating with the fair, and I think that it behooves us to try and connect you with them.
We would love that.
That would be, thank you.
Could you name a couple of those that would be likely?
One of them, which was big in Umatilla, which is building the largest wind solar battery, it's 350 megawatts, production facility, has said they want to come into Lane County. And when they come in with community sponsorships first, and marketing, and then project. And that's just one of several. There were about 3 or 4 I spoke with that I think meet that criteria.
Yeah, I ran into the 2 commissioners at a meeting and the vendors. I was impressed there's that many vendors there because I've seen you and Heather there, and as I left, I meandered through it.
Right.
And there's some definitely new look, what I would call a new look that we've not experienced. Definitely want to follow through on that.
Yeah, that's good info.
I think too is for you as commission to realize how much we have changed. We want to go to a family fair, and we've done that. But the biggest thing that's really made it successful has been the attitude of those 2 with our vendors and our fair growers. I hope you realize what a fantastic team we have, because I've had them mend a few fences. One of them just come up today about the ice cream vendor. We managed to irritate one of our neighbors, and that's probably not fixable. But they have brought Weimar back in, and maybe downstream, but it takes that leadership with that positive attitude and that really cares about our vendors that really is why we're successful. Just want you all to realize how fortunate we are to have that leadership.
For me, that rang through loud and clear before you even called it out.
Yeah, well, the fact is that hundreds of thousands of people, and you take a look at that number this year, the total attendance, 112,000 people, and I realize that could be multiple countings, and I get that there are some people, and I used to be in that category, that, they'd be a 4-day, person, but that means that, anywhere between a third and a fourth of Lane County's population is going through those gates and going out there for some purpose. Maybe it's to work out there, maybe it's to ride the carnival, maybe it's to introduce your kids to cows that they've never seen before, whatever. To me, it's just a wonderful opportunity, and I like your attitude, Corey, that you're going to try to not try to maximize the dollars, but you're going to be aware of how precarious it could be if we got an entertainer that wasn't as good, or at least the public didn't think was as good. My dad used to say alleged music, so but not everybody.
What was he referring to?
Not everybody likes all of the acts, and we know that, and we've got to satisfy big demographics, And I just think you guys do a wonderful job. Not only the fair board members, the volunteers that put in the time over the year, but the staff that really follows through. And thank you, Sid, for pointing that out too.
And Sid, you point out that our customers aren't just the fairgoers, but the vendors. And I'd like to talk about the back gate ever so briefly. The consistency that you've achieved at the back gate is easy for the vendors to flow in and out. And they see the same faces every year, year after year. It's pretty amazing, the consistency that's there. Brings the vendors back.
Yep. Yeah, some of our volunteers that are manning some of those gates or those doorways have been doing it for 20 plus years. You know, they're retired teachers. They come out in the summertime looking for something to do, and we put them to work, so.
Yeah, good, good.
Yeah.
Well, if there are any other questions during our work session, I'd like to make sure they get answered, so go ahead.
So, one real quick question. You hire a fair amount of temporary help. Do you have a number? Is that like 180, 100 temporary help for the fair?
I think we estimated between 100 to 150.
But that doesn't include the temporary help that our vendors and partners also hire.
Right,
So we hire
yeah.
internally on our end.
But I'm talking about Lane County employees.
Yeah,
I think it's probably, depends on the year. but
It
it's
depends on the
probably
year,
around-
and we've had some years where, you know, with the process to go through to get them in as a temporary worker, it takes a while. We tried to push that timing back a little bit to make it easier on HR to get everybody in. Unfortunately, when you put some time between when you hire them and when you put them to work, some of them found jobs, so. But it's ranging in between anywhere from 75 to 150 a year.
Typically, is that a lot of teenagers looking for summer extra income? Is it, you know?
We have it's really a broad mixture. We do have a significant amount of the younger generation, yeah, probably 18 to 25, but we also have a fairly significant older demographic that's working as well.
The creative exhibits departments.
Yeah.
tend to
And
more
we
adults.
do have some people, as mentioned, that have been working with us for quite a few years. There are some teachers, there's some lawyers, and some various other people that look for something to do in the summer, and they know that it's 1 week, and they enjoy doing it, so.
Randy Twinkle.
Yeah.
Good place to get
So-
business. That's right.
My follow-up to that is, I assume most of them come in at minimum wage.
Most of them do. We have some at a higher level that are
Yeah.
kind of your first line. They're returners. They're people that know what they're doing.
If we were to adopt a policy that required them to be paid $15 an hour, what would that do to your budget?
That would have an impact. We would have to sit down and go through the number of hours and what that impact would be. Yes, that would have an impact.
Thanks.
Significant, probably.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you for this great presentation and discussion about the 2019 Lane County Fair. My own preference would be that we would make a little bit of room down on the end, that if you folks want to leave, you can, but I think that it's great that we would continue the meeting and have our next presenters up, which is item 19B, update on permanent supportive housing. Jacob Fox, Executive Director of Homes for Good, and Steve Manella, Human Services Program Manager for Lane County. And if you want, Jim, you can
County
move that
Council's
chair
not
out of the
here.
way there, and we can make a little room here, and
Or
also
somebody
this
can-
one right here.
County council's not here, so somebody can sit here.
Perfect.
Anytime you get a lawyer,
What's that?
anytime you can not have a lawyer here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a positive, I guess. Okay.
Oh, get one of the regular chairs.
It's the right place to deck.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Is that gonna work for you, Jacob, as far as the location, or?
Sure. Yeah, no problem. Just to figure out how to get in.
Oh, okay. And are we waiting for Judy or
You need help?
Diana or Heather?
Maybe here, if you
Not here.
try
We have-
pressing Control Alt Delete. I'm not sure if that.
You need a pass.
Give it a shot.
Have you checked the plug?
While we're waiting, I'll just remind commissioners, I was gonna bring this up at the end of the meeting, but let me just do it right now, since we have time, is remember, we're meeting at 9 o'clock on Tuesday, the 17th, and it looks like it's going to be a action-packed day, possibly going into the noon hour. We definitely will start at 9. We'll probably start up at 1:30. We're having public comment at 5:30, so try to get your sleep the night before, because it'll be probably a 12 or 11-hour day of meetings. And then on Wednesday, the 18th, the board is not meeting. However, the commissioners will all be attending the Homes for Good meeting at 1:30 p.m. on Wednesday. Also, because we're not meeting for quite a while after the 17th, I'd like to remind all the commissioners to send their availability generally to Ms. Jones via email, because if we do have any need for a special meeting, we're not anticipating any emergency meetings, but if we have a need for a special meeting where we're required to give 24-hour notice, we'd like to make sure everybody is staying in touch with Ms. Jones, so that if we do need to get that going for a meeting, for something that needs to be done or approved. So, okay, I guess we're ready to go with our item, and this is a discussion on permanent supportive housing. Jacob Fox, Executive Director, Homes for Good, and Steve Manella, Lane County Human Services Program Manager, and welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Chair Sorensen. So just honored to be here today. Hello, everybody. And what we're doing today is just follow up with you as sort of in this joint meeting to talk about all the sites that we've been looking at as a result of encouragement from the Lane County Board, Lane County leadership, and the Fair Board. So what my plan is just kind of motor through all the different sites that we're looking at, and then make plenty of time at the end for any questions. I do move pretty fast, so at any point just slow me down and ask questions along the way if that's your desire. So what I'm going to overview, and Steve Manella will help me, we've been kind of working on this together with our teams, are just a number of different sites. Obviously the fairgrounds is a site that we've discussed as a group. There's an adjacent site that Corey kind of encouraged us to look closely at, which is the Jefferson.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you to slow down.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Would you, so that we're all on the same page?
Yep.
Could you tell us, reiterate, the number of units for this particular development that's in question
For sure.
as you start before, thank you very much.
Yes, for sure. And there's an individual slide for each one of these, so you'll kind
But
of...
this relates to the grant you got,
For
right?
sure, yeah,
Okay.
thank you, Joe. So just as background, everybody knows that we broke ground on the Commons on MLK, so that's directly adjacent to Lane County Behavioral Health. And that is a property that we categorize as permanent supportive housing, so it targets people that are experiencing chronic homelessness. And that's really part of a bigger community strategy to develop more units like that so we can address the crisis of homelessness in our community. Shortly before we broke ground on this site this summer, as you'll recall, we had the opportunity to apply to the state of Oregon for a special pot of resources for permanent supportive housing. That required us to commit to a 6-month training program for our staff, but at the end of that training program, we will get set aside resources to develop our goal, which is 20 more units of permanent supportive housing. We think the homeless target population will be slightly different for this development. And it's our vision that this 20-unit development will serve families that are experiencing chronic homelessness. And that could change a little bit, but that's the vision.
Thank you.
The
So
population...
20, is it
The goal is 20 units.
20 units? So roughly half, a little less than half of the one that we just began
Correct.
the project. Okay, thank you.
Less than 40%.
Yeah, so, Joe, did that kind of cover the background?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
Awesome.
Can I just ask you, I was at a meeting in Bethel the other night, and it was my understanding, there were some people, I'm not sure if you were there or somebody from your office was there, it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
And they were talking about breaking ground on this site in Bethel, but
Yeah.
I was just surprised that wasn't up there.
It's not supported housing. There's a difference.
I thought it was supported housing.
It's low income.
It's not the same population that we're discussing today, so people experiencing homelessness. However, we are in discussions with the Bethel School District about what we would call a priority for kids in the Bethel School District whose
Yeah, I heard
families
that too.
may be at risk of homelessness. And the Bethel School District has just been incredibly supportive of that project. It's a separate project. I'd be delighted to come to the school district or to you personally and give you an update on that, but that's separate.
Rich is the
thank
past chair of the school board.
Yep.
Thank
Cool.
you.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so the Jefferson Pool site, there's an adjacent site or pretty close site in Naval Reserve, which most people are familiar with. We're looking at the Surbu campus.
Where's the Naval Reserve? Naval Reserve?
Yeah, I have a slide that'll show you the exact location.
Oh, okay.
There's a site on River Road, there's a site on West 6th, 11th in Garfield, 11th in Charlton, the Musgrove Mortuary, an existing apartment community that could be torn down and rebuilt, an old VA clinic, and then an office building in Springfield, and you'll get a slide on each of these. This is a site that was in our application that we've discussed, extensively, both with the Fair Board independently and in the last joint meeting. So that's obviously what was in the application. So then Corey actually talked to us about this site, which is also on the fairgrounds. And what we determined in our due diligence on this site is because it's directly adjacent to the Amazon Channel, there's a 60-foot setback that's required by the city of Eugene, which essentially makes this not a viable site. There is a glimmer of hope that you could get the city to change that setback requirement, but it would, in our opinion, take way longer than we have to think about for these 20 units. And then this is the site that's owned by the city of Eugene. We love the site. We think it has a lot of viability. And Steve was in a meeting last Friday that I wasn't able to attend, and maybe you could just talk about that. And Corey was at that meeting.
Yeah, it's a site that's in the inventory of the Parks and Recreation Department at the City of Eugene. It's currently part of their master plan as a pilot for a dog park. And so one of the things that the city staff told us was that getting it out of the master plan and then some of the other things that would need to be done would take it out of contention for the timeline that we need for this grant proposal. Although I think there was a lot of interest from City of Eugene's staff, particularly sort of looking at this site, there was some interest in what's happening in reality is the people with dogs aren't only using the city's property, they're using the county's property as well. And so one of the thoughts was to maybe do something where, I'm just gonna get up here, but there was some interest in doing some sort of design where you do some housing here, maybe make some improvements along the bank. You could put a paved walkway or bike trail and some beautification to make some improvements there, and also allow neighborhood use for dogs, and work that out with the City of Eugene Parks Department.
Is that where the parking occurs?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
That is the old Jefferson Pool in red.
yes.
Yeah, the City of Eugene currently doesn't have any plan for that site. That site also came up in our discussions around looking for sites for an emergency shelter, although the team that's worked on that has felt like this would be a better site for permanent housing than it would be for that use, given the proximity to the residential neighborhood.
I don't know how you want us, you invited us to keep asking questions. That's always dangerous because we always have lots of questions. Is it okay if we ask? Okay, so in this scenario, the red part known as the Jefferson Pool site, it would be retained by the city.
No, I think what we would want is for the city to contribute this parcel.
Okay, I'm misstating
the-
myself.
the-
It would become the site of the permanent supported housing, and the triangular shaped part to the west, that is currently the fair parking, but that would be used for the dog park in your,
Well, yeah, we
in your
hadn't
thinking.
gone that far. It was
Okay.
just kind of a concept, knowing
Yeah.
that it wouldn't meet the immediate needs for the current project, but for planning in the future, that there might be some benefit to the whole area to keep some of it for parking during the fair, but for the rest of the year, find some other uses that the neighborhood would find, amenable to them. And that would include being able to rotate the dog park away from where it currently is and use the other parcel. So it's almost like a land swap type of a deal, or a
Yeah.
land use kind of a swap.
yeah, okay, thank you.
type of thing.
So this is a site, like me as an affordable housing professional has questioned, like what's the City of Eugene's plan for this site? This is a lovely site that has a ton of potential. The City of Eugene owns it, obviously it's close to the fairgrounds, and it's the old Naval Reserve site. And we just don't know what the plans are. However, one of the things you'll see at the very end of this presentation is we have establish some next steps with the City of Eugene, with Corey, with Lane County staff, to continue to explore these sites. So we feel like for the first time we may get a better sense of the viability of this property for affordable housing in the future, and it is an amazing site.
So there is, in our discussion, there is potential maybe for as many as 80 units on this site. And then additionally, we could build into the site both affordable housing and some permanent supportive housing on the site. So it is something that's been in the City of Eugene's inventory. And I thought at the meeting we had last week that they're very excited now about trying to work with us in partnership to look at how that would be developed. But the timeline's likely to be a year off from this grant proposal.
So the Surbu campus is another possibility, one of the, and it's a viable site that we'll explore. There's some, potential competing interests for the site, and as an affordable housing provider, I do think about concentrations of permanent supportive housing, and whether that's helpful or not helpful to the community long-term. That's just something that we'll continue to navigate together in that group of fairgrounds, city staff, county staff. So the Lane County also has another parcel that's directly adjacent to the Northwest Expressway. This site is potential. Some issues are just the proximity to a high volume transit corridor, and there's, depending on the flavor of the funds that are used in the development, for example, if we use federal funds, you have to go through an environmental review, and there's pretty stringent noise mitigation requirements. The other thing I would just flag is that this is also pretty close to the Eugene mission, and when you cite projects that are serving people that are chronically homeless, you have to be again thoughtful about what does that mean in terms of visitors to the project, Steve and I toured a site in Vancouver where they built a permanent supportive housing project directly adjacent to an area where homeless people camped, and it really created some pretty significant day-to-day management issues for that permanent supportive housing property.
Is that Railroad Boulevard on the right?
It is.
Yeah, thank you.
And this also has the complication, it was purchased with road funds, and we'd have to reimburse the road fund at full value.
So we also, we're actively looking for real estate all the time. So we work with Evans, Elder, Brown, and they always bring sites to us that are potentially viable. So this is another one that is on the market. It's not terribly expensive. It's a pretty small site, so that's one of the ones that we're also exploring, and I don't know if you have anything to add.
What's the cross street there?
That's on it's 6th Avenue. It's along 6th Avenue, and it's between two existing.
Yeah, but what's the cross street on 6th Avenue?
Yeah, to close.
Blair, it's closest to Blair.
No.
Okay.
Oh, yes, it has a fence in front.
Again, this, there was some discussion about this because I think Homes for Good has had some experience in a small acreage of, this is, quarter of an acre site, and getting, about 20 units onto a site like this, but it's sort of wedged in, it's not ideal.
So there's a site on 11th and Garfield that we'll also continue to explore. Again, the challenge with any of these sort of market sites is money necessary to buy the property. And this one's priced pretty aggressively at $1.1 million. This is a site I actually really like. It's on 11th and Charlton. The owner also has it marketed pretty aggressively, so this has the assessed value at $600,000. It's currently marketed at around $60 a square foot, so it's also north of $1 million. But this is attractive because our new administrative building that we'll be moving into in a couple months is in close proximity. So for us, eyes on the property with us so close in proximity would be a bonus.
Is the commercial zonings of these last couple any issue?
No.
C2?
No, you can do affordable housing and you can actually do significant density.
So,
Okay.
take this for example. It's half an acre, a little less. It's over $500,000. You like it because it's close to your new building, but that's not really a criteria. How many units can you put on something like that?
I don't know the answer to that, Joe. I do know that we have a parking lot at our new building.
So that would add, yeah.
And the density there is really significant. Over 100 units is what we could do on that property. So I would assume it's still in the same, so something similar here.
Wow, okay.
And I think St. Vincent de Paul, their development downtown is on even a small
no idea you can do that.
piece of property.
Can you get a co-development at a commercial site where you could also have commercial on ground floor as well as either permanent supportive housing or low-income housing?
Yeah, the way we're kind of envisioning the future of our development in downtown Eugene is mixed use, but with the commercial being occupied by nonprofits or possibly a day access center. I would say that our experience with Market District Commons on 6th and Oak is that it's pretty challenging to get a private sector developer to purchase a ground floor. That took a lot of work. I think their revitalization of downtown is going to make it more likely that other private businesses may want to purchase ground floor space, but it was a stretch for us. It was a challenging process.
Yeah, Heather?
I can add a little bit to that. To keep your nonprofit tax status, basically have to condominiumize and sell the whole first floor to private owners.
Yep.
And that is a challenging process before you even get to the sales portion.
Yep. The other thing I would say is just the downtown location, or this property or around this property, puts people close to services, transit, so that's what's attractive, in addition to being close to our administrative building. So this is a development that we own. It's an apartment community. It's on between 6th and 7th. It is a building that is older and at some point is going to need a major rehab or tear down rebuild. The thing that makes this a bit of a challenge is that it is full of highly vulnerable shelter care clients, so finding a way to move those folks would be pretty challenging in the current affordable housing market.
I'm sorry. How many folks would you have to move?
I'm pretty sure it's 36, Joe, but I can confirm that. 36 units, a smaller apartment community.
And how many units could one put on that site?
It's a C2 zone, so
maybe
a lot. Yeah, what I'll
So
do.
it might accommodate, I mean, if one was to do that on that site, and forgive me, I hope I'm not boring you, but it might accommodate avoiding displacement completely.
Yeah, so you gotta do something.
Well, there would
there.
have to be temporary.
Right, understood,
relocation.
but
Yeah.
they'd have a place. Okay.
Yeah. And I think your question makes me want to go back and have Steve Oakes actually add some unit potential to these
Okay, I'm
slides.
sorry.
Yeah.
I think that's relevant information. I'm just not sure we've done that analytics on all of these. So this is a pretty interesting site as well, medical clinic on River Avenue. It's a big commercial building that doesn't appear that it would be easily convertible to residential, and it's actually in pretty decent condition, so, and it's, over $2 million, so it's a pretty
And
expensive.
I just wanted to mention on this site, we are working and doing some work and looking at this building for potential other uses currently. So this is on the list for mental health crisis or a shelter and navigation center. The building was built in 1997, and because it was built as a medical clinic, one of the big pluses is there's already a lot of plumbing in it, where a lot of commercial buildings that you come across to convert for other uses, you don't have all the existing plumbing, available. So
That's where the dialysis facility was, isn't
We're also casting the net in Springfield, so this is an office building on A Street. So that's one thing that is sort of on our longer term exploration list. This is also some vacant land on A Street that's also sort of on our list. So in terms of next steps, with support from Steve Moker-Heisky, we're kind of narrowing in on sites. The Jefferson Pool site and the Armory site both feel like our top priorities. So that's kind of what we're focused on in the near term. I would also say that a lot of these properties, and there was even more that I redacted, we also need a long-term strategy in our community around future sites for affordable housing. We've developed 6 apartment communities since I started at Homes for Good. 3 of those came from land bank sites, or in the case of Market District Commons, came from the county. MLK Commons, land came from the county. And then 3, we were able to secure our own sites through the market. So we specialized housing need donated land, basically, so there's a real future need is my point. So we also intend to reach out to EWEB school districts, look at anything else that Lane County has and the city has to find additional land, so that's committed to an every other week meeting to actually move the dial and secure a site for the 20 units and for future PSH units. And then we're kind of divvying up some of the due diligence, and that'll just be part of how we track our progress in the.
Jacob, on number 4 there, identify priority staff, sites with lead staff for each site. What is the reason you leave the city of Springfield out of that?
I think it was just an omission, honestly.
Okay. I feel like one of the things, if we're going to develop the 50-unit site in Eugene on the MLK site, that both for purposes of serving the overall metro population, but also because of the location challenges of where we locate a facility. I think it was either this week or last week, the board approved purchasing a clinic on West 11th for a methadone clinic. And we had all kinds of location, potential, not in my
Point of
neighborhood.
information,
Yeah,
we approved waiving the 1,000-foot requirement, but we have not yet approved purchasing.
oh, okay, yeah. That's coming on the Board of Commissioners meeting. That's coming. So assuming that we do approve beyond the decision to waive the requirements location, then it becomes, as we're discussing with the Fair Board, a potential location controversy where putting this service, let's say at 18th and Jefferson, complicates the work of the fair, or even on the fair site. So I'm just saying, I think we ought to make sure that we're not only providing the benefit to the community, but also avoiding the future criticism that we put all this money into Eugene, and Eugene gets all this money, and Springfield doesn't get this money. And that led to Springfield withdrawing from the Housing Policy Board.
I think this is reflective we had with the team, we had our second meeting this last week, and this was just reflective of our discussion, and I think that everybody is very interested in expanding the group of people who would be meeting every 2 weeks, who would be interested in including the city of Springfield, school districts, anyone who wants to participate in assisting us with, and I think the idea of having a lead is on each of these sites, we need to be able to have people, head administrators of those organizations, assign people and tell them that it's a priority to help us with this. Otherwise, what we find is the typical process that we have to go through ends up being very timely, and particularly for the grant, we're trying to do something very quickly, which requires getting organizational buy-in to push some timelines.
Yeah.
Springfield has a strong presence in human services, much at HSC and
Right.
on Public Homelessness Board.
Go ahead, Joe.
No, I'll go
Oh,
with you,
and Sid, go ahead, and then we'll have Joe.
Yeah, wait, go ahead, Sid.
Well, in our last meeting, I was concerned about the time frame, and Commissioner Gurney suggested you go back to see if we could get an extension on that. Did you follow through, and did we have any luck with getting an extension on the time frame?
So the cohort that we're participating in has 2 opportunities to secure resources. So it's our understanding that this March, they will release what they're calling a mini NOFA for that cohort to apply for resources. And then a year later, there'll be a second cohort, so we don't really have to ask for an extension. I would say that given the number of people I see sleeping under tarps and under bridges, I am super motivated to not wait for the second round.
So the nuance that has happened with the folks that we're sending to the training is that we know that we have to have a site and apply in March. But then the other piece of it is that the state of Oregon is being a little more flexible about having the building up on July 2021. So there may be an ability, if we do have a site and it takes a little bit longer to develop, that the state will provide some more flexibility in terms of when it is up. But it's still, we're still pushed to identify a site for the March application.
Yeah, for 20 units isn't a lot of units given the need in our community. There's other money that will be released like in January, and then again in the fall that could be used to develop more permanent supportive housing. We just can't afford as a community not to pursue those funds. So for me, whether we can get the City of Eugene to support the Jefferson Pool site or the Armory site, we want to do 20 units.
Do you mean the Naval Reserve site?
That's what I meant.
So, yeah, you've said that before, and I wanted to clarify that, because we just committed the Armory to our developmental disabilities folks.
So we want to do more than 20
Details.
units, and we really need to be applying for any and all funds for affordable housing possible.
Okay, I think you were next, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And then Jay.
I want to hit on two things really quickly. One is on that number 4, it does exclude some groups that I think you're coordinating with lead staff on. So I would encourage City of Springfield and others that they just be articulated, because there have been a couple of times I find that our staff is Eugene centric, and it's good to get out of that mindset. Second, Jacob, based upon what you shared with us, and by the way, I commend you. I think we have to develop a more exhaustive inventory for future growth. And I think that there are parcels available that I'm aware of in Springfield that are not on your list. And finally, do you see any problem identifying one of those 2 sites so that you can move forward with the application and yet still have the time necessary to develop it appropriately and properly with all parties concerned?
Say that last part again.
Are you going to have a site by March that you can put in your application to get the money?
Well, honestly, I do have to depend on people like Steve Mokraheisky to help, especially with City of Eugene sites, and I am confident that the City of Eugene is showing up in a way that's very helpful, and I'm positive about the potential, but I can't really say to you today when
Right.
we're going to get one of these sites by March.
Right, but that's what you're shooting for.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Then-
Quite frankly, if we can get a commitment or identify a site and lock it in, it would be a stretch, but there is a funding round coming out in January with 9% low-income housing tax credits, and I'm not aware that there's a project that will be pursuing those from Lake County.
And there are bonus points in the 9% application in January for projects that are permanent supportive housing, and in housing finance terms, basically that is a resource that's going to pay for about 70% of the
More like 90.
more like 90% of the project, so.
That would be for a separate project from what we're talking about here, the 20 units.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah,
Or could it become companion?
Or they could be on the same site. I mean,
yeah,
there's
Right.
a lot
yeah,
of
it could
different
be estate development.
Okay, Jay and then Heather.
Thanks. I just have to say, I really think that Naval Reserve site has really got a lot of potential. I like the idea that you could do the 20 permanent supportive housing units and then develop just other affordable housing around that, particularly with its location next to an elementary school. And if we're going to do the permanent supportive housing for families,
Great.
you know, it just would be, you know, walk to school from there would be great. So I think that's, I hope if we can get something worked out with the ownership on that and quickly, that just has got a huge potential for long-term inventory of affordable housing. as far as affordable housing goes, and you mentioned looking at that long-term, the near-term, long-term pipeline, as we get to the long-term pipeline, those other partners, don't forget that we need a lot of affordable housing outside of Eugene, Springfield metro area. The coast has got a dearth of any sort of affordable housing, and we get into some of the rural areas like Oak Ridge and Cottage Grove. Just don't forget to reach out to those partners too and try and identify inventory for, that we can put into the bank and look for bank properties.
One of the things I wanted to mention is that we have a ongoing partnership that Jacob and I, it's led by Karen Gaffney, that we participate in, and it's the Healthcare for Housing group. So there is some potential with folks like Peace Health, who own property both in Eugene and Springfield. And so we're exploring those opportunities as well.
Cottage Grove and Florence.
Cottage Grove and Florence as well, yeah.
Good.
Okay, Heather?
Well, you took some of what I was gonna say, so thank you. I know we, for a smaller complex, which I would consider 20 units smaller, those are really good sizes for rural communities. And when you have a nice square footage in downtown Springfield or Eugene, those are really great spots of land for some higher density supported housing. So when we get opportunities like this, it would be great to also have that identified small parcels available in rural communities, just so when situations like this occurs, we can spot them in an appropriate location all around the county.
We've been, and I'm not even in, his group is more directly involved in affordable housing, but through the Poverty and Homelessness Board and the folks that we have there, what I've been hearing about in different locations in rural communities are churches that have additional land that adjacent, that they're interested in maybe having a conversation about making available for developing some affordable housing. So, and I've been surprised how I'm hearing more and more about that interest from those people.
Inventorium.
On Friday, we submitted a proposal to the Cottage Grove School District with a master plan concept for their 6-acre surplus site that would partner with Dev Northwest and do rental housing and homeownership housing. So we are working outside of the metro area.
So, do you want to add anything else in terms of presentation? I know we're way over our time. Anything further from you guys before we invite the Fair Board or Fair staff to make any comments or?
Just that Corey was at the meeting on this last Friday, had super creative and helpful ideas and engagement, and we want him to continue coming, so I just want the Fair Board to know that Corey's showing up and being super helpful.
Okay, and so any comments from Fair Board or Fair staff before I turn to the commissioners for their last comments, if any?
Just a reminder that our market analysis consultant project's coming back, I believe January 15th is what we've got it scheduled on, and I know some of the areas and grounds will be a target for, some of their recommendations, but that really does then finally open the door for us to sit down and discuss what's that master plan gonna look like. So, I don't know what the time frame is gonna be on how we wanna put that together, but that will open that door for these long-term discussions of pretty much the whole fairgrounds parcel, including the buildings as well as the grounds. So.
Good, good. Anything further from Fair Board members? Okay, thank you so much for you guys coming today, all of you, and I think that's been very helpful discussion. Anything from commissioners before we do a break before our next session? Anything further, Commissioner Farr?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at Jacob, we always think we have a site and then the neighborhood shows up. And so you always look, we're trying to get ahead of the curve always on making the announcement based on recent, particularly on recent events where we didn't get out of the gate first. So not a strong comment, just a caution that you're well aware of is that the people who live there will have something to say when it's time to make an announcement.
Okay, so it's my intent to recess the Board of Commissioners for 5 minutes, and then we'll clear the room, say goodbye in a cordial fashion, and welcome our presenters for our next thing. So we're in recess for 5 minutes. back to the Lane County Board of Commissioners. Thank you so much for our excellent work session and discussion with the Fair Board and about their fair and our fair, and also the permanent supportive housing projects. Now we're going to have a discussion on item 20A, updated strategic plan priorities. And this will be, this is set up for a 45-minute session. If our friends at Lane Council of Governments record our meetings, if they need to abandon us to go to the city council, we know they will, but we're happy that they're going to keep recording us. So with that, I'd like to introduce Ms. Williams. She has a 15-minute presentation, followed by an estimated 30-minute discussion session. So welcome to Ms. Williams, our Strategy and Integration Manager.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Sorensen and Commissioners. And so I will briefly do a high-level overview of the packet, and you have a packet that's online, and I also made extra copies. If anybody needs a hard copy, please let me know. There's also some, if anybody else walks in, that we got as well. A lot of material to go over, so if you wanted one in front of you, it might be helpful. So I will go ahead and get started, and feel free to ask any questions if you have any. But I just wanted to do a quick high level of the presentation. I'm going to talk quickly about what is a strategic plan, the timing of why we're doing a revision to the plan, identified priorities that we talked about a month ago, and some of the results, and just kind of walk through some of those changes. And again, stop me if you have any questions. But basically, the strategic plan, as all of you know, it really helps to give our organization some direction, some focus in terms of where should we be going. This is high-level priorities established for our organization, and it also assists with how do we align our resources accordingly. Briefly, what it's not is, it's not an entire listing of all of the great services that we do and the programs that we have. So I just want to take a moment to say, while we have excellent employees, our people do a great job in the day-to-day services, providing those essential services. They may not every service may be called out in the strategic plan, and that's really just to say that we're functioning really well, and there isn't a need to pay special attention. We are doing such great work day in and day out, providing, marriage ceremonies, for instance, your board packets, and getting everything ready to go for every meeting. Legal counsel, HR, deeds and records, elections, assessment, taxation, just those essential services that we couldn't do what we do without them. So I just wanted to make a quick note of that. Briefly on the history of this strategic plan, while it was adopted in March of 2018, we've done some quarterly updates to the board since then. And with the adoption, this really had a very robust engagement effort that went into this plan. So we did focus groups, we did surveys to residents, to our employees, got really good response rates for both groups. We had open houses, just really trying to get feedback from the community and our staff in terms of how should we define our priorities and move forward. And as a result, in the plan, we established our new core behaviors, which are the focus on solutions, passion to serve, and driven to connect. We also reset some of our values. We had 7 values at the time prior to this, and 7 just a little too many to even remember. So, what's the value of having too many values? And so we really asked our staff to help us with that and reset those to just 4: integrity, excellence, equity, and respect. And then the priorities, we established safe, healthy county, vibrant communities, robust infrastructure, and those largely stayed the same. And this is where we added that fourth priority of our people and partnerships, really highlighting the work of our employees and focusing on the workforce and also the partnerships internally and externally. So briefly, why are we working on a revision? We wanted to make sure that we have the full board's priorities weaved into the plan. With 2 new commissioners at the beginning of 2019, giving a few months to get immersed into the services that we provide and getting everyone on the used to how we operate. We felt that it was time to take a step back and hear from the board, making sure that we want to see every board member reflected so that they can see themselves reflected in this plan and what their priorities are. So we did a board retreat in September and also included our management staff, our executive level of leadership to that retreat as well. Spent some time kind of brainstorming on what some of those priorities should be. What are some of the themes that are really coming out from the priority sessions? And then proposing to you today some of the feedback and results that we heard. So before I delve into some of the specific priorities, we talked last time in our work session about these kind of overarching themes of the plan. Again, these came up over and over from those discussions, and how do we not just call out one initiative around equity or one initiative around keeping those wheels on the bus, and what does that actually specifically mean to everybody. So as we discussed these over and over, we really wanted to make sure that they are incorporated in the plan, incorporated at that higher level. We were calling them standard operating procedures as a possibility. And then we truly felt that we needed to take a little more time and really weave in what we wanted to come out of this. Why are we calling these out? And so we're going to be developing a little bit more specifics around this, but we wanted to talk through how we saw these overarching themes, how we can present them in our plan. And so that really came to the idea of these lenses, if you will. So strategic lenses as we think about any strategy, new initiative, project, how are we moving forward? What should we be looking at? What questions do we typically ask? So to try and provide some clarity on that first one of the wheels on the bus, there was some discussion about, what does that mean for everybody? Is it the financial aspect? Is it those core essential services that we do day to day? And so we're really trying to call it out and then define it as financial stewardship. So launching into any new project, asking those questions of how are we going to be paying for this, and so forth. So again, those lenses of perspectives that we want to be viewing initiatives. And an equity lens is a second one. And so while we've came to the board a couple of weeks ago and had that facilitated discussion with Terrell to talk about priorities for what we're calling Equity 2.0. We have a little bit more work to do as we're kind of towards the end of that process. We're hoping to come back to the board in January or February with the Equity 2.0 plan and what our steps are. So we didn't want to hold off on incorporating what we've been hearing in this work until that time. So this is why we're inserting it, knowing that we have a little bit more work to do to define what do we mean by an equity lens, how is that going to be incorporated, but really going back to those questions of, is the community represented? Are we engaging the community, and what are some of those next steps so that we know we hope to have an impact, to a good impact on the community when we move forward with an initiative or project. And then the third is collective impact. So a lens looking at how focusing on our relationships, our partners, an example of homelessness. You know, while we can tackle homelessness ourselves at the county level, but how do we partner and how do we collaborate with our partners, as we all know we need to address any particular issue such as homelessness? How do we do that collectively? Do we have a shared agenda? Can we have shared measurables so that we can really focus on having the most impact on any one issue? And then to quickly go into the priorities, when we had that facilitated discussion to draw out what some of your priorities in the next couple of years were, this is a high-level summary of what some of your thoughts were. Is can we identify housing, that interconnectedness of housing, mental health, and the public safety system? Housing came up in many aspects of housing, safety as well in terms of resources, climate change, community benefits agreements, and prevention in general. And so we took that back and really looked through each one of the other pieces that came out of that session. Were also to note that we may not necessarily need to scrap the plan and start over, but see how we can weave some of these into the existing plan. Some of the other questions were, you know, are some of these a little too vague? Do we need to get a little more specific? And so we tried to incorporate that, and I'll walk through a few of those, and you have those in your packet as well. So we really tried to go through every item. Some of them fell off as we naturally were working on or have completed those. Some of them were adjusted just as the scope has changed as we've been progressing. But some of them that are highlighted in the slides, upcoming slides, relate specifically back to those priorities that we identified in our last board work session. So again, I have copies in front of you if you'd like. They're also available online if this is a little too small, but I just wanted to try and get these so we can have a discussion if you wanted to pay closer attention to the details of the wordings. But I'll quickly go over those.
And excuse me, I assume, Mr. Chair, we want to hold questions and
Yep.
discuss. Okay.
Yep.
I'm sorry to
Yep.
interrupt.
No, that's good. I appreciate that. I know sometimes presenters say, please feel free to ask us questions, and actually we're trying not to do that. I mean, I know it's nice, and I know it's something that people often say,
Sorry to interrupt.
but no, we're really trying to give the presenters
Okay.
their full time. So I appreciate Ms. Williams offering, but we really, and I appreciate you recognizing it. I just, so you're well within your time.
Okay. So I'll go over a few other slides. I just have about 5 more I'm trying to just highlight high level what we've added specifically to your priorities. So the first one that's highlighted here is implement the 10 housing and shelter recommendations from the TAC report. Plan and implement winter shelter strategies. And those were related to the housing priorities that you identified. Implement the community health improvement plan. And this is, while we do this every few years through prevention and health and human services, this is the kind of the drawing back to that prevention priority that was called out. The other one highlighted is collaborate across public safety and human services to improve behavioral health and the public safety, homelessness and the public safety system. For vibrant communities, this is where we've called out one specific item as relates to the community benefits agreements. And the language from this comes from the board action when we were talking about the Justice Center and trying to adopt those 5 priorities. So I know we've talked about, there's several definitions out there, so I'm happy to take your feedback later on what your thoughts are about this. So it's develop and implement a policy for community benefits within capital projects to ensure development projects maximize local impact, especially with regard to promoting the use of local businesses, contractors, and workers. living wages and family health benefits, prioritize diversity and equity in the workforce, incorporate sustainability objectives, utilize state and federally approved training and apprenticeship opportunities for community members. Also under Vibrant Communities, we added several new items as well, but going back to the board priorities is what's highlighted is develop a comprehensive climate action plan for Lane County. Under robust infrastructure, we didn't add any, there was nothing in here that really called out some of the board priorities, but there are several of these that have been updated to reflect work specific to what we're hoping to achieve in the future. And then also our people and partnerships. And hopefully you'll see a theme throughout of this streamlined effort to have a little less on our plate in terms of all of these initiatives. So we've reduced the number quite a bit. But these are the ones for people and partnerships. And they're, again, not any related back to the board priorities that were called out, but there are many changes such as B1, identify and implement opportunities to promote a positive workplace culture and improve workforce health, and improve employee wellness. So several of these have been updated, and I will quickly go over next steps and then turn it over to a discussion. So I have a placeholder on the December 17th consent calendar item agenda if the board were to be interested in adopting this as is or making some minor edits to it. I could come back to the board via that consent calendar item to adopt this if that was the direction. So not action required today, but we can do that next week. And then talk about the communication plan. This is what we're working on internally. Once we have these adopted, new updated revisions, communicating that both internally and externally. And then working on establishing metrics, as many of these have been updated and revised, just working with those project leads to really, what are we going to be evaluating? What are we going to be measuring so that we can track progress in the end? And then just know that this is a living document. We will be coming back on a quarterly basis with updates regularly that we can weave in new updates as the scope may change or new priorities. And then just a recognition that through the discussions, I think it was mentioned and a good recommendation to do this type of activity at least every couple of years, and at least for the board, especially if we get new commissioners, when we do get new commissioners, to have a board goal setting or prioritizations exercise to weave those into the plan. So that's all of my presentation, and I will turn it back over for...
All right, excellent. Well within our timeline, so thank you. I know Commissioner Burney wants to be recognized.
Not right this
Not this second, okay. So I'll jump in, and if any commissioners want to be recognized, let me know. Okay? And my comments are, my first comment is with regard to the time frame, is this going to be a 2021 to 2013 time frame? I mean, 2021 to 2023 time frame? In other words, on the first page, it says 2018 to 2021. So obviously, we can't really change what happened in 2018 or 2019. Well, I guess we have a few more days to change what happens in 2019. Can you give me an idea of what the date would be of this strategic plan?
My thoughts and preference would be to keep it as the 2018-2021 strategic plan, knowing that we will be providing and having regular updates to the plan.
Okay.
And then having more of that robust conversation towards
Okay.
the end of as we get into 2021
Mm-hmm.
to
Okay. How would you feel about making it the 2020-2021 plan then? Because we've already got 18 and 19 done. In other words, to reflect the fact that we are making a plan, and the plan is future focused.
I think it could be either be that we're calling this a revision to the 2018 to 2021 plan, or we could call it the 2020 to 2021 or further out plan.
Well, I'm just curious what you think that are we revising this 2018 to 21 plan, or are we making a new plan that starts in 2020? In your view?
Revising, I mean, we have a plan.
We're revising it.
I think it's, I don't know, this is gonna be, the plan after, if you adopt it today, is the plan. So
Until-
if you wanna
until
call it a
20
revision or you wanna call it a new plan,
Yeah.
I think either one is accurate, because we certainly are making some substantive changes,
Yeah,
right? Both in terms of the details, the
Right.
goals that are, the
Right.
action items that are laid
Right.
out, as well as the lenses that we've identified. So, to me, this really is evolution.
yeah,
It's not
yeah.
discarding the past
Sure.
and starting from scratch. It's really taking things that have worked well and building upon that and adding some new things. And that, to me, is the essence of a good strategic plan, that it's not something you ever stop doing. You're constantly reviewing and revising it.
Right.
To your question about should it be 19 and 20, I mean, I think, 20 and 21, that's really what we're saying, is that I think realistically, we're gonna have at least one new commissioner in starting January of 2021.
How do you know that for a fact? I'm just kidding.
I'm basing that on.
I know it for a fact. I know it for a
I wanted
fact.
to get back on the bookmark thing.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if anybody else is leaving, but
It's still early.
we'll have at least one new commissioner.
Yes, at
Yeah.
least, that's what I'm saying. So,
I don't know if he's leaving, but I'm leaving.
I would say that, as Judy said, we're gonna continue to sort of review and revise
Yeah.
on a quarterly basis and
Okay.
update this as we
Yeah,
go
yeah, yeah.
forward. It's probably gonna be appropriate at some point in the first half of 2021 for us to have the conversation again, is this reflective of the board's priorities?
Okay, I'll just say that for my preference, it would be that we are making a plan, and we're constantly reviewing that plan, and that plan is called the Lane County Strategic Plan, and this particular Lane County Strategic Plan is gonna be called the 2020 to 2021 plan, and then it'll get revised, and we'll have a new Lane County Strategic Plan. That's just my point of view. No one else needs to agree with me or otherwise. I do have a couple other.
May I speak to that?
Well, let's get me done, and then you'll get your time, okay? Then the second one is on the strategic priority number 1, the safe and healthy county. One of my concerns about the future and what we're working on is in the category of healthy community is, and I'm not quite sure if it fits here, it may fit somewhere else or it may not fit anywhere, but I do think it's an important concept. I don't think we've had the level of what I called healthy civic engagement with our community as a county government that we should have. We will go to the voters and we'll ask them to approve a ballot measure, or we will tell them that they need to get their immunizations, or we'll tell them that they need to register to vote or get their ballots in. And that is all good, and that's all ongoing work, but a priority of civic engagement where they understand there is a county government, they understand, and Douglas County does a newsletter, okay? Now they're, a third of our size, half our size, quarter of our size. There's more engagement, and I don't know exactly what that voter engagement or public engagement would be, but we've committed to some evening meetings, some public comment in evening meetings, possibly even doing evening meetings. We've talked about, we should be, in my view, increasing our, we've got good PIO function here at the county, central government, the sheriff's office, the Health and Human Services. But in my view, revision to our strategic plan would be to put an emphasis, and I put it under healthy civic engagement to fit it into the safe, healthy county component of the three. That is an idea.
Sure, can I? Sorry, I don't
Yeah.
want to cut you
No,
off, but
cut-
just on
yep.
that one
Let me
point,
respond.
Yeah, no.
my suggestion, I understand where you're coming from, the safe, healthy county priority is really intended to reflect, physical, mental, behavioral health, as well as the public safety component. When, in the strategic priority 4, we talk about people and partnerships, that's really intended to look at, and again, if you look at the graphic, we put that in the center of everything, to say it's both the people we employ and the work that they do and how we're engaging and empowering them, and then it's the people we serve and we tax, and we represent in the community, and how are we engaging those folks. So I just offer that to you, that may be a place, because that place then touches everything.
Yep.
It's really how are we engaging with our employees and how are we engaging with the public.
Right. I just think that one of the things that is important about this plan is to have the commissioners, give their perspectives, and to the extent that there is a melding of the ideas that Ms. Williams is so capable of doing, each commissioner ought to give their own perspective on these things. My last and final one is I would like to see some greater vibrant verbiage or verb in the strategic priority 2, vibrant communities. I would offer a couple of ideas. One is instead of protect and enhance our natural and built environments, act on climate change, protect and enhance our natural and built environments, so that there's an action component to our act on climate change. And also, I noticed that part of what we're trying to do here is we're trying to implement the Parks Master Plan. I would like to see that same language associated with develop and begin implementing comprehensive climate action plan, so that it's not just that our goal over the remaining 1 year of our 2018-2021 strategic plan, or as I might suggest, the beginning of our 2021-2023 strategic plan, that we commit to not only developing the climate action plan, but to begin implementing the climate action plan. And those are my comments. Jay is up next. Joe is up next.
Joe is up next, I think.
Oh, no, please. I'm still processing.
Okay. Jay is up, and no one else is up after that, unless...
I am up.
Okay, then Joe's up next.
So I just wanted to see if there's some place under the Safe Healthy County, and it probably would go under D, to add something about the Mental Health Crisis Center as a goal. I think we kind of missed that somewhere in there. It's part of D2 in some ways, but I think it needs to have a separate goal there.
Number 3.
Yeah, like a 1D3. And I just want to say, I think you did a great job of capturing that herding cats we did.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, back a couple months ago, and putting this into a document and wrapping in the new priorities. I think you did a great job and updating everything, so I really appreciate that. I'll just note on 1D2 also that you may have to change the name in there with Lieutenant Halverson. I understand he may not be long-term, so just a lot of competition for workforce in public safety. Let's put it that way. And then the only other thing you said under item 4B2, when you explained it, you used the word, and I gotta flip to the right page, you used it, workforce, and the second time it's mentioning you have workplace, improved workforce health. That's what I think you meant to say. So it's just a typo. And civic engagement wise, yeah, it should probably, if it's going to be anywhere, it should be under 4. But I look at that as a responsibility of each one of the commissioners to be doing everything they can to engage their constituents about what we're doing here as a county. I do it through social media. I do it with, my internet radio show. I do it by being involved in my community. Heather does KNND and also has office hours in Cottage Grove, so each one of it does it in different ways, but I don't know if it needs to be wrapped into the strategic plan necessarily.
Jim? Yep. I would like to vote that this be called the 2018-2021 strategic plan. And the reason I feel that way is and maybe I'm wrong, I seem to recall an earlier conversation where we discussed not rewriting, but as long as this was a living document, and which I feel you're doing in good faith, I'm fine with that, as opposed to a new plan. Just my one vote. I also was going to use Jay's phrase of herding cats after experiencing the retreat. I felt you've done a really good job making us look good on this. Here are my inputs for what it's worth, and I may be completely in the minority on this. I think that when you look at lenses are sort of you can look at the world through rose-colored lenses, which I sometimes do, or you can look at the world through crap-colored lenses, which my wife sometimes does, and usually it's somewhere in between, but you're looking at everything through that, right? So my input is, I think the collective impact ought to say something to the collective positive impact, because sometimes people criticize our collective impacts, but that's for what it's worth. I think the community benefit framework, and to take away from the confusion of the gentleman that came down saying, well, it means this here and it means that there, I think for our conversation, Steve, we're creating a framework, and that is the way we look at things. So I would consider that a lens for what it's worth. And then my other input is on strategic priority 2, A4, develop and implement a policy for community benefits. Instead of with, I would put starting with, because capital projects are where there's track records of doing that. But I would like to think that as we have success, we can look at how that can impact other areas of county operations. And then I would add living wages. I don't think there's a need to articulate all those points, but if you do, I would add where it says and family health benefits. I think the issue is and full family health benefits. And then finally, I think this is consistent with what Pete said, but it's a different word. It's a little more concise. Under B1, I would simply put develop and implement a comprehensive blah, blah, blah. Those are my inputs.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Can I just make a quick comment about the lenses, because I think this is an important point, and I want to make sure the board understands practically. I think Judy talked about, we've had values, and the values were really these stagnant things that were just, they weren't active in any way. They were sort of like, well, we hold integrity and excellence and equity as things that we say are important, but we didn't use them in an active way, like we do our core behaviors, where we're using them when we recruit and hire people, we're using them for annual evaluations when employees are evaluated, we're using them for recognitions and those kind of things. And as we knew that equity was going to come forward as a recommendation from our Equity 2.0 work, to incorporate equity as a lens, to make it an active part of what we do, it caused us to really think and spend time having conversations about what are the critical lenses. So let me just give you how in practice we envision these lenses being utilized. let's take the Justice Center project. We have a major need, we know, to replace the existing courthouse for all the reasons we do. When we're having that conversation and saying that we're first saying, answering the question, how are we gonna pay for it? That's the financial stewardship part of this. Where are the resources coming from? Do we do it responsibly? Two, how is everyone in our community reflected and impacted by this decision? So you think about access to justice and all the different ways that we've talked about. That's the equity side of things. And I would argue that community benefits is part of that. How does everybody in our community, how is everyone impacted or benefit from this project? Are people positively or negatively impacted from that? And then three, have we engaged with all of our partners? Are we communicating with people, those stakeholders we need to? Are we engaging the partners we need to be successful? That's the collective impact side. So I just wanted to kind of articulate how we envision those lenses being operationalized in the organization, so they actually become part of our conversations. Another example would be the decision yesterday you made to move forward with the new building at MLK for developmental disabilities. Any of these big decisions that we're asking those questions, we're viewing through those three lenses.
So, I think Steve was responding a little to what I said, so if I could, I think that equity is vague right now. In fact, you even said that we might want to define it further as we move forward, and that community benefit framework is equity plus. It also discusses two environmental attributes, and it also discusses a real focus on sourcing of local materials to keep money moving locally. So that's why I said that. I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, Steve, but I'm just pointing out to me it fit in that lens area. But
Heather?
So I'm gonna start with a couple of the items that you've all talked about. I'm also good with the current name of the plan with the revision, knowing that 2021, we're gonna probably have a whole new 4-year plan again. I'm good with that. And I'm also fine with the number 3 that you mentioned, a mental health facility that you mentioned. I think that's important too. I also agree with adding the word implement in the priority 2, section B. I think for the most part, like, these are pretty minor adjustments. And another just nitpicky thing, which I'm sorry to add, but in the last, priority 3, the last section C3, which is identify and develop a new location for D&D. I think we've identified the location, and so I would probably start that sentence with develop, since that was recent that we made that decision, and you probably read this before then. I mean, it would be more like develop and construct a new location. But that's pretty nitpicky. On priority 4 with the civic engagement, I agree that that's probably a better location for that. To an extent, like, I agree that it's commissioner's responsibility to do civic engagement, absolutely. But again, like, the most asked question I ever get is, what does a commissioner do? We try to explain it in probably a million different times to people, but it is something that is a challenge for us at the county, is to try to make that more well-known. And part of that is through civic engagement. In the last section, embrace internal and external partnerships. It only mentions something in IT, really. And we do need to have, like, robust civic engagement, especially when we're talking about the courthouse and justice center. probably for the good portion of 2020. So I feel like there's a place for that. How we want to frame that or write it, I don't know. But it's twofold, not only letting people know what we do on a daily basis that they don't know about, but affects their lives greatly, and making sure that we have the best civic engagement we can pass when we have bond measures like we're talking about coming out in their voters pamphlet. Overall, I really, really like this updated plan. I think you did really well with incorporating everybody's ideas. And I think ultimately this is gonna be something that will most likely pass unanimously.
Okay, Commissioner Farr?
Thank you. You've done a superb job. That really is worthy of nothing more than marginal adjustments. And one thing that I will say is that an effective strategic plan evolves, and sometimes it evolves based on organic developments. Things that weren't foreseen at the time the original plan was written should become more evident as time progresses. Sometimes that can be inserted in as a tactic, and sometimes it needs to be revised as even a strategy, which is a group of tactics. But generally speaking, a strategic plan cannot be about-faced every couple of years. It's got to be an ongoing document that really takes into account everything that's gotten you to that point. It's important to understand that things will happen that are unforeseen, and things will become more of a priority that were perhaps not seen as a full priority at the origin of the genesis of the strategic plan. But the genesis of the plan is where the plan begins, and that doesn't go away. As you move forward, it changes, and we are calling things out in the strategic plan that really have always been there, but are now being called out so that it becomes more of a forefront talking point or a forefront action point. And that is what I see, and that's where I see the value of what you presented us with today, Mr. Montgomery and Judy. It takes into account what we have done, what we continue to do, and really what is organic in the organization that sometimes we don't call out as things that we are doing. The case in point is the Mental Health Crisis Center. Now, by putting it in as a line in the strategic plan, I love the thought of that. Is it necessary? Maybe, maybe not. It's only necessary in that it gives us the verbiage to actually state it out loud and let people know that we're working on it. We've been working on it for a long time. We put $1 million into it this year as a county, but not only we in this room, not only the Board of Commissioners, but virtually every stakeholder in behavioral health is working on that, and they understand the value, the importance of it. So our strategic plan has to have the latitude to insert within the existing strategic plan, insert revisions, insert even new strategies, and certainly on a regular basis insert tactics. You're presenting us with a revision here that did, I believe, superbly take into account what was a fire hose of information for 2 days. For more than 2 days, for 11 and a half months now. Things do change, but the changes don't need to, the changes very rarely are something that is a brand new direction or a brand new focus for the work we do as a county. And so I think you've captured that really nicely here in our 2019-21 strategic plan, or 2018-21 strategic plan, that really helps people who look at it understand that it's an evolving plan, and that it's not an edifice. It's a working plan that really incorporates things that are said at this table, but also things that are said in meetings and general strategy sessions that we aren't even involved in. I listen to Manila talk on a regular basis about the things that I work on most of my waking hours. And hey, what are you doing talking about that when I'm not there, Steve? So it's we have to understand that things are working and evolving. The other thing I'll say about civic engagement is that if anybody really thinks that we're not civically engaged on a very broad front, they haven't paid attention to the newsletters and the information we put out on a regular basis. They haven't paid attention to what individual county commissioners do with their constituency. And they certainly haven't paid attention to what Mr. Mokrahajski and staff does on a regular basis with all of our partners, all of our jurisdictional partners. We are deeply involved in civic engagement. And while we're starting to do evening meetings and adding different tactics to civic engagement, we've always done it. And I believe we've always had a pretty robust effort that has been well received and has been an open highway for input from the community.
Okay, Commissioner Buck?
I forgot to mention one other thing. In the suggestions that Commissioner Rooney had on the vibrant communities regarding the community benefits framework, since this is a relatively newer concept to the county, and we know that staff are going to be reading these and seeing these, I would recommend what we keep the language with the explanation of what it is with your corrections, at the very least initially, as everybody understands what we're talking about. That's the only thing that I forgot to mention.
I'm +1 on that.
Good. Well, I think all the commissioners have indicated strong support for the base document, and you can take all of our comments and try to incorporate them in. As far as moving down the road to approval, I would say, why don't you make those changes that you feel appropriate, that encapsulate what we've done, put it on the consent calendar. If there's any major change or something, Commissioner can take it off. But I think that we're all, in appreciation of what you're doing. One comment I'll add, and we can have another round of comments, but I just want to mention that when I first came to Lane County, there was no public information officer, none. Not one in the sheriff's, not in the county administration, not in Health and Human Services. And that it's been a drumbeat of mine over nearly a quarter century now that whatever we are doing in the outreach area, okay, whatever we're doing, it does not come up to what I would call business norms. And you heard our fair finance person talk about the use of social media and the use of the amount of money it takes to promote what the fair did, okay? Well, yes, we have a website and we have a vibrant, group of people working on that website, but in my opinion, it's just my opinion, we're not doing what businesses do to promote themselves, to really reach out. And I get it that we all have had or will have town hall meetings. We will all post things on social media. We'll all have, I always recommend to commissioners that they have a MailChimp account and they use it frequently to educate people about what they're doing and how important the county is. But we are not making the kind of impact in terms of our market for the importance down the road, that next year, the year after, that I think we should. Now, have we made progress? Yes. I think having these folks, well, I'm pointing to the wrong folks, to point to Ms. Ashbridge and others, yes, we are making progress. But in my view, if we compare ourselves to others, we are not making the progress on civic engagement and awareness that we should. And I think we're all doing a good job, doing what we can. I just think that the amount of money we're spending on this now dwarfs what we were spending a quarter century ago. Okay, and that's good. That's good. But there's so much more to do. Commissioner Farr.
I'm going to take a moment to agree with you 100% on that. When I was a Eugene City Councilor, I didn't really know what you guys were doing over here. And then I became a councilor before you became a commissioner. So it goes back before your time. It's like the county commission was the only engagement that I had was at the Human Services Commission meeting. And really, we have come a long way since then, and it's in no short amount due to you bringing your experience and the things that you have done. Because if we look at civic engagement, Pete, in South Eugene, man, you are a model of civic engagement. You know, I mean, people, you said MailChimp, I don't know what that is, but, you know.
The mail, it's a direct mail,
Email.
information.
Okay, but clearly, you
sibling
are a
of Mail
master
Gorilla.
of that, and this county has changed since you became the county commissioner. And I can tell you that, because as a city councilor, I didn't know and care what you did. And now, the city council, I guarantee you, knows and cares what we do. You know, so,
Yeah.
not just the Eugene City Council, but the Oak Ridge City Council and the Benita City Council.
Yeah. Commissioner?
I find that interesting, because back then, my understanding is that each commissioner had 2 full-time staff people, and a lot of timber money was coming in that allowed a lot more to go on. I would like to know, before I make a couple of quick statements, Pete, show me a model of what you're talking about that you think we ought to look like, because I don't have one in my head. Do you have one?
Well, one that,
Because a business isn't a model.
yeah, no, one that I think is worth looking at is what some cities are doing in terms of outreach. City of Gresham, Oregon is one of the pioneers in this, where, you know, they have a outreach for, are your questions being answered? Are you getting the answer you need from the city government?
Okay.
That's an example where the city has made a concerted effort to, you know, make sure that the city works for the people in the city.
Does that include social media, Pete?
It includes social media. And Baltimore, I think, is the big city, or Baltimore County is the big city or big county example. But I think problems of comparing us to big counties is always, you know, we're not a big county compared, but Gresham is a small city.
Yeah, I'm gonna research it, because I want to.
people.
Yeah, and Mayor Schmoke, I believe was his name, the mayor of Baltimore, did a major civic engagement, like 411 or 211, some kind of.
Catherine Pugh before that.
Yeah. So, you know, there's a lot of other models out there.
Okay, so there are some.
And Congressman DeFazio, one of his big points with me, at least, about county government is, you know, it's one thing for our voter registration people to register people to vote. It's another thing for us to provide information in the pre-election period about the whole process of voting, the elections that are coming up, letting people know they can file for these things, rather than it being a legalistic thing of, if
Okay.
you want
I'm gonna look into
to,
it.
anyway, those are some
No.
ideas.
Um,
More
what-
information, Douglas County does a newsletter.
Yeah? Oh, thanks. I was just going to say that, that the whole notion of, I'm gonna sort of agree with Commissioner Farr, that it's not that we haven't been doing it, but I think, many people in our county that we serve, would like to hear that we're trying to focus as much as we can on engaging them in decisions, that's all. And so it might be a good message in the same way that, and I want to do a +1 on what Commissioner Bozovich said about mental health, on what Commissioner Buck stated, and I also want to also commend you, I think, Judy, not Steve, Judy. I want to
Commendation is welcome.
because honestly, we've simplified and gotten to the kernels of a lot of things that actually allow inputs. I was having trouble inputting because it was so complex and before, but this is letting me do it, which means for me, it is a living document, and it's a big deal. I think the answer I'm starting to give, for whatever it's worth, when people say, "What do you do as a county commissioner?" I say, "What don't I do as a county commissioner?" And I know that's what I'm learning after 1 year. But also, in that regard, I want to state, when I worked with many of the building trades in Los Angeles County, their business development people pointed out, I think it's applicable here, that our members don't understand often the origination of all their jobs. Like they don't know the development work and the deals cut in order for the business things to end up being jobs for them. And I think in many ways the whole notion of civic engagement has to do with just trying to, it'll never be perfect, but just calling out that we think it's important, that we're trying to let our citizens know the origination of all these policies and all of this activity, because it's a huge amount. So thank you. And thank you, because I know you're going to incorporate these comments.
Can I say one more thing about Pete before you?
About Pete?
You know, that's something that you just said that really struck a note to me. And you talked about pre-election, educating people what it means, how to do it. You do it all the time in board meetings. Sometimes it seems remedial when you're talking about something, but it's very well studied. I've had people point this out to me that Sorensen tells people how to do things and tells people why things happen the way they happen, who may not really fully understand how they, and I think we can all take a lesson from that. You do a superb job of that.
Thank you.
And it's Rick Lindholm that really pointed that out.
Yeah. Steve?
I just offer that, I agree with the comments about public information, public engagement. I think that it's a body of work that we can always do more. But as with everything else, we can do more in economic development. We need to do more. We can and need to do more on housing and shelter. So these issues become trade-offs. And I'd offer that if this is an area that the board would like to focus, I think it'd be a great opportunity to have a work session to bring a number of folks forward and talk about what we're doing, the various outreach and programs and initiatives and way that we're handling both proactive information sharing, response to inquiries, as well as the kind of engagement. One part of this is pushing information out, the other one is how do we have a dialogue. So we can lay all that out and then seek the board's input about what are we missing, what would you like us to do, because there's an endless body of work we could pursue. The question is, how much time and money do you want to invest in this body of work? And understand, and this is really the value of the strategic plan, right? Is we're trying not to say we're going to be all things to all people. We're trying to say with limited resources, limited staff, limited time, we have a scarcity of a lot of things. So where are we going to put those limited resources so that we can be most effective in the places that the board has determined are the highest priorities? So I encourage you as we move forward to come back to this document, focus on this document, and if you haven't identified something, if we're drifting and we're starting to focus on things not in here, we have to either ask the question, are we doing the right things because we're over here and we've said that our priorities are here, or we need to shift the priorities and say, well, maybe our priorities actually have shifted. And I'll make one other comment just on the public engagement piece. I think just to keep in mind the reality of constraints that exist for a county government like this unique county. I've been in county government for over 20 years now in 3 different states. And this county in particular is unique because it's huge geographically. 12 cities, huge unincorporated area. It's also not insignificant in its total population size. But you have this population spread over such a wide area. And then you have the challenge that even in the metro area, you've seen a sort of disillusionment of or disintegration of sort of traditional media outlets, right? You used to have a daily newspaper that had a beat reporter at the meeting every day, and they would report on that. That's gone. So while you have more forums in which to communicate with people, like social media, there's also a saturation of information. So it's tougher to penetrate your message with audiences. So there's some realistic challenges and constraints that exist, but I think it's a great conversation for us to look at and to have moving forward.
But if I may, I really love what you said. That's a really good analysis, and a work session also to me makes sense on this issue.
I was just going to also add in terms of the equity lens piece, and I know we have more work to do on that as we're working on the Equity 2.0, but engagement is one of those aspects that falls in really nicely too, in terms of there's tools that we can walk through in terms of how do we engage before we're working on this is what we want to do. How do we engage and incorporate the community and not miss, so get their input early on. So I think there's a nice fit too in that lens piece as we move forward with defining that and spelling that out. And I just also wanted to thank you for your time and your comments. This has been super helpful, and thank you for the kudos, but I'm simply pulling this all together and putting it in on a document, but it's a team effort. It's county administrator, the directors, management team, staff. It's very much a team effort, so thank you.
So you not only baited the hook, you caught the fish and prepared them for service. Seriously.
I would say you didn't simply do this, you seemingly effortlessly did this. Any other comments? I just want to make one final comment, and that is, buckle up for Tuesday. It's going to be a big one. If it goes well, it's all because of me. If it doesn't, I think
It's my
Commissioner
fault,
Buck
right?
has agreed to take the fall this time. No. So no, seriously.
I have one,
Okay, go for it.
before we close out, I guess it's under other business, but I quickly just want to remind people that the LCOG annual awards are out, so they're looking for nominations for outstanding elected official, outstanding citizen, outstanding public career, outstanding public employee, outstanding intergovernmental team, and regional award of merit for economic enhancement. So if anybody knows anybody, feel free to nominate them.
Right.
Is there a thing, do we have something that states all those categories?
Yeah, I have it, it's on LCOG's newsletter, and I can forward it to everybody.
Would you, thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, we're adjourned until Tuesday.